Welcome to the Draft Professor channel, home of Epic Mock 26, April 9th, 10th, and 11th.
Well, hello, everybody. This is Jim, joined today by Christian. We're going to have several other draft professors joining this feed. Today is the start of Epic Mock. Hank is here. Christian's here. I live for this weekend. Like, I love doing this 32 podcaster mock draft. So we've got 32 podcasters all over the world participating in the same mock draft. We see Price Carter here. He's drafting for the Chiefs. We are getting ready to go. The first pick is in. But Hank, welcome. Christian, welcome. Hank, how are you doing today? Okay, Christian, how are you doing today?
Hey, fantastic. I can already feel the excitement baking in within me. It's not even draft week officially yet. So once again, Jim, I really appreciate you reaching out a while back and wanting me to be a part of this. I'm super excited, looking forward to the next few days.
Yeah, so Christian, you're going to be part of the Eagles War Room. So why don't you talk about the Eagles contingent for Epic Mock here for a few minutes, and I am going to tweet out the first pick.
Yeah, we're sitting down there at pick. What pick are we even? 22 or 20? We're pick 23, and we've got some tough decisions to make, specifically along the offensive line. We had concerns with Landon Dickerson and Lane Johnson, their future beyond this season, but they both announced they're coming back. But whether what that happens in 2027 or not is still up in the air. So I expect offensive line to be a heavy point of emphasis on multiple occasions, on day one, along with day two, and probably even on day three as well. Cornerback is a need as well. Tariq Woolen got signed from the Super Bowl champion Seahawks on a 1-year deal, but he's only here for this season. So they're kind of shallow in that room. The Kelee Ringo experiment hasn't exactly panned out. He's in a contract year. They've got their two studs at corner between Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, but they're still looking for that cornerback two of the future with Reek Wold on a 1-year deal. Reed Blankenship is in Houston. So safety, I think, is a sneaky important need for the Eagles. I would expect them to address it at some point, although the fact that they brought Marcus Epps back, they agreed with a restructured deal for Michael Carter. It would not surprise me if they addressed it at some point on day two. I would not expect it. Wide receiver, also another need with the pending AJ Brown situation. Also, Jahan Dotson left in free agency, so they've got some question marks with their wide receiver depth. And then lastly, tight end. Dallas Goedert was kept, but again on a 1-year deal. And the elephant in the room with their tight end situation is who's going to be the blocker, because tight end 2 was a liability with the identity Eagles have of pound and ground, establish the running game. And if you've got a tight end who's a bit of a liability as a blocker, it's going to be problematic, as we saw last season.
So we have Hank joining us. Hank, do we have audio now?
Yeah, we have audio now.
Fantastic. And Ben. Ben, it's great to see you.
Sorry, I'm late. My Twitter locked me out for some reason.
Oh, all good. So, the evolution of draft professors, right? Because 12 months ago, none of you were podcasting with draft professors. So you're all, let's say, within your first year of podcasting with us. I am thrilled that all three of you can be on the main draft professor feed here for Epic Mock. Ben, what are your thoughts on Fernando Mendoza going first overall to the Raiders?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything else is going to happen. The Ty Simpson stuff, it just kind of seems like smoke. He's not. I feel like everything about Mendoza has been said already by everybody. I feel like it's tough to say anything new, but yeah, I don't feel like in an ideal draft he would be the guy that goes number 1 overall. I do think when you give him actual NFL passing concepts where you need to target the middle of the field, like they did in the Purdue game, that's actually kind of how they kicked off the game. They let him run a lot of NFL type concepts like drive over the middle, and he struggled. He struggled to read it out a little bit. So yeah, like as much as I do think he needs to see more stuff like that, I think he's a high character individual and a really hard worker. And I think the processing that they do have him do on the typical down to down basis, like those flood concepts to the left or right, that kind of splitting the field in half type stuff. Like he throws with great anticipation. He's got great arm talent. So there's a lot of stuff to like with him, obviously. And it's hard to not love the guy. So yeah, I would certainly take him at number one.
Cool. And Hank, you've already started diving into some of the QBs for 2027. How does Mendoza stack up against who you've watched so far for 2027?
Yeah, so I mean, of course, positional value is king with the number one overall pick. It would never be anyone else. But in terms of how he would stack up, he would probably be my QB3 next year. For the 5 guys that I've watched, and that doesn't include names like I haven't rewatched Dante Moore to get another feel for him. I haven't rewatched Sellers. If you're a Julian Sayin guy, I haven't watched him. I haven't watched DJ Lagway. So there's still a ton of names I need to get to. But right now, currently, he would be right behind CJ Bailey and Arch Manning for me. Really like the fit for Mendoza going to Las Vegas. But I do think that there are a few questions to ask. You know, he had a really good offensive line in Indiana. He had a really strong and established run game. That's not going to be the case week 1 for the Raiders. So how is he going to be able to adapt? How's he going to be able to adjust? It's going to be a big adjustment for him. I think he can handle it. Of course, we talked about his mindset. He has the mindset to handle it. So there should be a lot of positives with Mendoza going to Las Vegas.
Well, and then Hank, David Bailey goes number 2 to the Jets. What do you think is the thinking with David Bailey going at 2nd overall?
Well, honestly, I think the thought behind this is Anthony's trying to, feel better about himself after posting the video of him assaulting the cameraman on Twitter. So that's why I think he's trying to make amends with David Bailey here. But honestly, David Bailey's a freak pass rusher. One of the highest, or if not the highest, pass rusher win rate at the college level in like the last 3 to 5 years, I want to say, of players that are going to get drafted to the NFL in the first round, I believe. So David Bailey is going to be a day one difference maker off the edge in terms of, third down, get after the quarterback, pin your ears back and go. But there's a lot of questions in the run. He looks good against Oregon against the run. He has plenty of clips and flashes of him dominating the run. There's, of course, questions about, is he a little bit stiff? Can he bend and dip? I don't have those questions. I think he's a stud. I've been high on him since the summer. And David Bailey is just another guy that's going to go into this Aaron Glenn defense and hopefully let him keep his job for 2027, which is the ultimate goal with him.
Hey, and just for the record, so the Raiders pick was made by Marcus, who is a Raiders podcaster. The Jets War Room is being run by Steve. And he is a Jets podcaster, and the Cardinals are on the clock. So, curious, Ben, what you think of David Bailey going 2nd overall.
Yeah, I'm not there with the top 10 hype with David Bailey. So I do think the bend concerns are really overplayed. I think people saw one combine drill and they all of a sudden assume that he can't bend the corner, which is a ridiculous claim. Like he doesn't have amazing bend, and it wasn't tested very often by a lot of these Big 12 tackles, but I don't think it was a liability at all for him. What my main concern was with him is I think he does have a lot of moves in the bag. I'm concerned about the ability to counter because he wasn't tested in that area a whole lot, like first off. And when it was in the Utah game against Spencer Fano and against Caleb Lomu. And what they started doing is they started oversetting the corner so they could catch him there. And it would take him a couple reps before he realized, like, I need to try and attack him another way. And then he would hit him with an inside spin on one rep, and it looks good. Like, it's in there. We don't see stuff like that a lot with him, but it's there. We know it's there. So I just want to see him develop a better pass rush plan. And it's tough to say that's something he absolutely needs to do because you're really going off of like the one game he was actually tested, the one game he was actually met with the idea of like, okay, you need to actually make the adjustment here. So I'm worried about that. I also just don't love that he also doesn't have speed to power that much in the bag. Like you see it sometimes, but again, it's against some of these lesser Big 12 tackles that I don't really think have great anchor. So yeah, in the run game, I think he plays it well, but again, he doesn't have that sand in the pants and that anchor to stack blocks well. So there are limitations with David Bailey. I'm certainly in the mid-first round range with him, but not top 10.
Okay. It looks like we have a trade. I believe the Giants are trading up to the 3rd pick. But before we get into that, Christian, any additional thoughts on David Bailey going second overall?
Yeah, it's if I were the general manager for the Jets, it's the pick I would make. Arvell Reese may be the better player, but if you had to ask who's best fit, who's most likely to come in as a 3-4 linebacker and make an impact day one rushing the passer, the answer is Bailey. And to Hank's point about, Aaron Glenn's got to save his job. And you do that. You don't do that by drafting projects. You do that by drafting players who are ready to come in and make an impact day one. That's Bailey. It's the pick I would make. You could argue Reese if it comes out that Aaron Glenn was given a multiple year leeway. But as much as things unraveled last year, if they start to lose early, and we start to see a similar trend what we saw last year, his seat's going to heat up real quick. So the best way to change that is get players who are ready, who are plug and play guys ready to make an impact right now. That's Bailey. Arvell Reese at edge. I got him as the edge on my board, but it's still a projection. We don't know if it's going to work or not. He may be best served as an off-ball linebacker. We just don't know. We know with David Bailey, that guy's an impact player on the edge, day one.
Okay, so any thoughts, speculation on why the Giants are trading up?
Get ahead of the Titans for Jeremiah Love. Oh, Sonny Styles.
Well, we know now.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't really think a trade up was needed to get Styles unless the Titans war room is really high on Styles and they just see him as a day one starter. But I think they have other needs to address. But I think Sonny Styles is the best player in the draft personally. I love him. I think he's going to be a stud from day one. So trading up to get a day one starter on your defense, and it's only 2 spots, and the biggest piece you're giving up is a next year round 2, which we won't even have to worry about in this mock draft. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also have Sonny Styles as my number 1 player in the class. Yeah, I also agree though that I don't think they really needed to trade up to get him. And it also feels like if they were going to go somewhere, I would almost rather they went with. Or wait, didn't they make a signing a cornerback in this offseason? Oh, they got Newsome. That's not really. I mean, they have a Debo too, and Newsome's only on a 1-year deal. Like I would have rather gone in a position like corner, and they still need offensive line too. Everybody's talking about them getting Jeremiah Love. It's another putting the cart before the horse situation. They need to fix that line, especially if you're working with a young quarterback that doesn't see pressure all that well. So, but I do love Sonny Styles, and I'm not going to argue the pick. I'm just arguing the trade up.
Honestly, when I saw the trade come in, I instantly just thought it was Arvell Reese. Like I thought, they were going to jump the Titans for Arvell Reese, and or maybe even Ruben Bain, but that would have still shocked me because I don't know. I don't really understand the trade up, but I don't hate it because Sonny Styles is just that good.
Yeah, if you want to stamp your claim on him, I get it.
It's the typical Harbaugh pick. You go back to Harbaugh's tenure at Baltimore. Their identity was letting the board play out and let players like Tyler Linderbaum and Kyle Hamilton fall to them. So, yeah, I don't think they need to trade up to get Styles at all. I think he's going to be there for him at 5. But yeah, I'm with you guys. I don't hate it at all. I think he's a really, really, really good player, and who's going to be a great fit. Because remember they got Trey Edmonds too in free agency, so that is going to be a tough duo, real Harbaugh duo at linebacker in the middle of that defense as they turn things around on that side of the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely questioned the trade up. I actually tried to talk them out of the trade. That doesn't seem like it's something that would really happen.
Yeah, because the Titans just don't need Styles right now. They're looking Reese, Bain, wide receiver. You don't really think Sonny Styles when you think of the Titans at 4. So just they gave up 186 in a next year second for a player that they more than likely could have got at 5. And it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But Sonny Styles is very good, like we've been saying.
Yeah, they certainly could use a linebacker, but yeah, they have so many other needs. I don't think they're going to be looking at him. I agree.
It would have been the first shock of this draft if Sonny Styles went at 3 for me. I think. I don't think I've seen that pretty much anywhere on Twitter. So,
and we're off, and I know that they're as one of the event admins, I know that there's a lot of other trades coming. I'm waiting for the other teams to announce them, but I do know that there are other trades in the works. Steve and I are the ones that are approving most of the trades. So,
And let's kind of visit the trade from Arizona's standpoint. They've got a big need at pass rusher for Arvell Reese, but what are the chances the Titans take him at number 4? They could, but
not even for me. What's the
you
chance
can
that Bain and Reese are both gone at 5? What's the chance of that?
Yeah. And really the need that I see most frequently that Arizona really wants to hammer away at is the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
So, you could Malino or Fano at 3, but you could move back to 5 a couple spots and get a second round pick next year and get an extra. Is that the 6th round? 186. Arizona should be hammering the phones at moving down, in my opinion, because they've got a lot of needs on their team.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we just figured out who went at 4. We got Jeremiah Love. He's gone. Titan.
Yeah. You want to kick it off, Ben? You want to kick off your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't like it. I love Jeremiah Love. I'm very against. I think the run game is becoming more valuable again, and I think the position of running back, the value is starting to swing up a little more. We're seeing a bigger rise in 12 personnel. We're seeing more teams trying to zag after everybody's been zigging, and they're trying to take advantage of these small ball personnel units that we're starting to see. Base defense is essentially gone. So you're seeing like nothing but 6-man boxes, and now you're starting to see it swing. But I'm not there at the top 10 with running backs still. I can't get there, especially if you're a team like the Titans who have question marks at their offensive line, who struggled to open lanes for Tony Pollard last year, who's a pretty solid running back in his own right. I think he's proven that over his career. Like last year, it was more situational, I think, than him just declining. So you need receivers. I know you signed Wandale and you gave him a crap load of money, which I didn't love that either. But I would argue you still need receiver. You still need edge. You got Jermaine Johnson, who's your other guy. You need cornerback. You need a lot of stuff. You got to start putting up the foundation. A phrase I've been using a lot lately is like, you got to build the house before you start picking the drapes. I feel like they just picked the drapes here.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Saleh spent every day last year going up against Christian McCaffrey. Brian Daboll had to watch Saquon Barkley do nothing but break records in 2024 after his general manager let him go. This is Saleh and Daboll getting their start in the backfield and doubling down on their offense. They spent a lot of money to load up on defense. Now they're shifting their focus to the offensive side and getting their 3-down, every down playmaker who's a dynamic, versatile chess piece on steroids.
Yeah, I will chime in with my thought. I'm not this high on Love because I'm still trying to warp my mind around the idea that there's a chance that Jeremiah Love goes higher in the draft than Ashton Genty went at 6. Yeah. And for me, I think Genty was in a different tier than Love. But also, I was a major Ashton Genty fan. Thought he was special. Nearly threw the generational tag on him, but he just went to a pretty bad situation, and we're seeing how that's happening. And it wouldn't shock me if we're going to do the same discourse with Love. If you watch the all 22 of the NFL games, Genty looked good, but the numbers were there, and 75% of NFL fans, they're not watching all 22. They're not going back to the games to rewatch what happened. So they just think that Genty sucks now. So it's a bad situation, but Love is very good. Christian, you brought up the idea of him being a 3-down back. I have some questions there. He was playing with Jadarian Price, for a majority of his time in Notre Dame. And is he able to handle those, 16 to 20 carries a game, 4-ish receptions a game? More than likely, yes, but it's going to be his first time really doing that. And there's going to be a lot of heat on him being the top 5 pick in the draft. So everyone's going to want to come after him, make the plays on him. It's going to be a lot of pressure on Jeremiah Love because of the situation, because of where he's drafted, but he is a very good running back talent. I'm excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, and a big part of why Genty saw all that trouble last year, he's running a Pete Carroll 2000 USC offense.
Oh yeah,
old school. Tennessee, Brian Callahan didn't work out. Mm-hmm. Now Clint Kubiak comes in, expect big things from the Raiders offense. It would not shock me personally if Ashton Genty won the rushing title next year. But and Jeremiah Love then goes from Tennessee going from Brian Callahan to Brian Daboll. Massive upgrade. So I think the schematics play a big role in it as well. And to your point, Hank, the 3-down concerns are they are legit because Jadarian Price had such a sizable workload consistently. But I see the pass catching, the pass protecting. I think there's more than enough there to suggest that he can do it at the next level. But yeah, your point's spot on though.
For sure, like me talking about Jeremiah Love's potential as a 3-down back, just me stirring the pot of it. There's not a doubt in my mind that he can't be a 3-down back in the NFL. But we got to ask some questions here. As Ruben Bain was the pick at 5. Christian, you want to kick this one off with your thoughts?
Yeah, Bain, that's over Arvell Reese. Everyone, the thing that I see, the arm length is not a concern, and it to me, in my opinion, shouldn't be, because I watched him on the national championship game. He was the best player on the field, and I'm not sure it was particularly close. And that's despite the fact that Mendoza just took over in the second half. But I thought Bain was even better. And he reminds me of my confidence. You guys can chime in on this. My confidence, Brandon Graham, kind of got that a little bit of a tweener, can win outside, can win inside, going to win with power more than speed. But he just has the ability to take over single-handedly. And we saw the main concern this season was 2023, where he was ACC Freshman of the Year, or 2024, where he's going to be battling injuries. Which one are you getting? And I think it's more than safe to say now that the 2024 was the anomaly season, and he's much closer to the dominant player we saw his freshman year. I don't hate this pick at all. It's what Arizona needs bad. I like him with Sweat on the opposite side. It kind of gives him a little bit of a 2022 Eagles vibe with Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham back a few years ago in Philly.
Yeah, I'll definitely say, just quick on Bain. You just draft good football players and you start rebuilding your team. And Ruben Bain is probably the biggest game wrecker on defense in this draft, and he showed it throughout the season in college football. The best player on the field in every single playoff game that he played, in my opinion. He just is a game wrecker, and this is a major get for the Cardinals. He'll just be an instant day one game wrecker for him.
And it helped his teammates around him. And there's a bit of a reason that Akeem Mesidor didn't pop until this year. Probably because Bain's just wrecking tackles on the other side and drawing a lot more attention.
For sure.
Yeah, I think they got to trade down to get him too. So you not only added value and probably got a player that's better than both players that went before, in my opinion. Well, that's Sonny Styles, it's arguable, but Ruben Bain plays like I said, he's my number one player, but Ruben Bain plays at that more valuable position. And people talk about the arm length to near death, and it never affects him on tape. He has all the moves that you would hope from somebody that has those concerns. He knows how to keep hands off him. Not only that, but his punch is quick. His punch has that timing where he closes that gap sooner. So he can get into your chest. He can bull rush the crap out of you. And not only that, but you think the length would affect him in the run game. No, he's an absolute mauler who understands how to stack blocks. He's got perfect stack peek shed technique. Like, if it affected him at all, yes, I would have concerns about it, but it does not. He's my favorite edge rusher in the class. I love your Brandon Graham comp. Mine is Terrell Suggs.
Yeah.
Yep. Like it. I will just start us off with Carnell Tate then at 6 of the Browns. Really like this fit. I mean, it's one of the most obvious, I think, picks that could happen in 2 weeks on draft night, just because you keep the Ohio guy in Ohio. You keep him in the state. You send him to the Cleveland Browns, have a major need at wide receiver. Jerry Jeudy hasn't been the guy that you thought he would be for you. Shedeur Sanders, if you want him to succeed next year to the best of his abilities, you need to get him a weapon, but then you also need to get him time. So the question with this pick for me came down to, do you like the offensive tackles in the 20s or do you like the wide receivers in the 20s? Looks like this group prefers the offensive tackles when you get to 20. I personally think the other way. I think that the wide receiver value will be much better when we get to their pick in the 20s, but I could be convinced either way. Carnell Tate is a very good boundary wide receiver. He'll be good from the jump, and it's going to be a good weapon for Shedeur Sanders to continue his development, hopefully. Yeah.
So if you guys don't know, by the way, nice to meet you. I'm Ben. My first time podcasting with you guys. I'm a Browns fan. I'm a huge Browns fan. I'm upset they didn't trade down. I don't have one offensive player with a top 10 grade in this class. Not even Carnell Tate, not Mekhi Lemon, not any of the tackles. But I will say I'm closer to that with somebody like Carnell Tate than I am with the offensive lineman. I do have Mekhi Lemon graded above him, but I understand if you would rather go for more of an X receiver, be able to let Jeudy flex into the slot a little bit more. Plus, they're running a lot more 12 personnel, and they are probably going to continue to do so under Todd Monken. who also loves 12 personnel, and he loves to stretch the field with it too. He's got a unique scheme in that right. So if you want more of an X, I totally understand Carnell Tate. And I think from what I hear from everybody's accounts, he's got a great head on his shoulders. He's like always staying after practice to do extra work. He loves football, great competitor. And he's also the best jump ball winner I've seen in my entire life, who also has enough athleticism on a lateral plane to be able to separate and flash his chops of route running. Like, I know the tree was limited this year, and I know there were moments, which my concern with him, sometimes he'll telegraph those breaks a little bit. Sometimes he'll not fully sink his hip into a break or something like that. Sometimes he has a couple false steps in there or doesn't throw an indicator step. Either way, incredible athlete. And I think he's somebody that's worth taking in like that mid first round range. And just seeing the state of this draft, if you just want to get an offensive player, I totally get it. I would be okay with Carnell Tate. I would be upset we didn't trade down, but great player. Something to be said about that. He reminds me of Martavis Bryant.
Mm-hmm. Then Christian, you want to do Tate and then just lead us into downs?
Yeah, so I want to start by giving you a little bit of a proposal here. So I saw a report yesterday. Browns trade down and get Kenyon Sadiq.
Oh, no.
How would that? How? Because Monken loves. He comes from Baltimore. Monken ran a lot of 12 personnel. I'm not sure how much validity there is to it, but I do think it's something.
Oh, I have Sadiq as a late first rounder. I don't know if I'd take him at like 12 or something if we trade down with like the Cowboys. Like, and also you got to think about the utility of the tight ends that you're going to be putting on the field. Is Sadiq going to be the one to play in line? Like, I would like a Y tight end. We have Fannin as this move guy. You can play him out of the slot. They play him at fullback sometimes. He plays that kind of H-back role. He's the move blocker. He's the trap guy. Like, we have that. And that's what Sadiq does so well. He's a great blocker. He's better. He's way better than Fannin. But still, you want to have him in that same role. So I don't love the idea of just like, oh yeah, he's going to want two tight ends. Let's get two tight ends. They're different positions. And that's what was so good about when the Browns had Njoku, is he played that inline role. Yep. He got bigger over his career. He added 30 pounds from the time he was drafted to his last year with the Browns. He was like almost 270 at one point. He became this great jump ball winner. And he was also this guy that was strong enough to play inline, wasn't the best blocker, but he could hold in gap. So we need someone like that if we're going to go tight end.
Yeah, Tate, he's mine. But back to Tate. Yeah, appreciate that, Ben. Good stuff on that. Back to Tate. He's my number one receiver. It's kind of close with him and Lemon. I think I've got Tate right on the edge of my top 10. I've got Lemon just outside. But I think it's safe to say Browns are going wide receiver offensive line with their first two picks. I think that's kind of the worst kept secret of this first round. But the question to me with which direction they go with this pick, what do you want to do with Tytus Howard? Do you want to play him at tackle or you want to move him into guard? Because if they want to move him inside, Francis Malinois, to me, or either him or Fana would be hard to pass up. And Malinois, I think, is the better fit with the Monken offense, wanting to run the ball, finding Quinshon Judkins last year, between Judkins, Dylan Sampson, run the ball, call 45 runs a game, and have Shedeur throw 20, 24 passes a game.
Easier on him, yeah.
But if you want to play him at tackle, then your O-line, then it's probably too early for Ioane at 6. So then it becomes trade down or just take the best receiver at number 6. But I think it really depends. I've not heard this directly yet. What's going to play on Tytus Howard? Because he could play either spot, and that would change at least my outlook if a decision would to come out like, yeah, we're going to play him at tackle or we're going to play him at guard.
Yeah,
but just having that uncertainty, it makes the order of it just makes the potential avenues a lot more unpredictable with this spot, given the uncertainty of Tytus Howard's position next year.
Yeah, I'll talk on the line briefly, and then I think we should kick it off to Hank, and he can talk about the next. We're missing some picks here. But yeah, quickly on the Browns offensive line, I like how they targeted versatility with the players they signed, because Tytus Howard, he can play guard, he can play tackle. You look at his career production, he's produced equally at both, essentially. They also Elton Jenkins. He can play center. He can play guard. He's played tackle in his career. You know, I don't love Zion Johnson. I don't care about Zion Johnson. He sucks. Let's just replace him. But yeah, if you wanted to go tackle in the draft, go ahead. I think the plan is ideally Titus Howard is your right tackle. But if you got somebody else you'd rather play there, yeah, sure, kick him inside. You got to have that flexibility to get all your best 5 guys on the field.
Yep. I will go down to Downs. And speaking of that, like, we're going to be here for a while anyway, so get all the side tangents you want off. I mean, this is going to take 32 picks. We're probably going to be here for north of 2 hours. So I'm more than fine with listening to you guys talk about the Browns at 6 all you want. But Downs going to the Commanders. Downs going to the Commanders is just, again, drafting a good football player and putting him on a defense that needs help. Instant impact from day one. Dan Quinn's defense, he's going to fit in really nicely. I think getting him at 7 is a steal. I think he's the second best player in the draft. You know, of course, positional value of, you know, conversations will always reign supreme in the top 10. Do you take a safety in the top 10? I think when you have a safety of Caleb Downs' caliber, I think you take him in the top 10. I think he's very good, very polished. You know, can he give you single high? Can he play that role? Probably not. I mean, he probably could, but he won't do it at the level that he plays near the box, that he can play in the slot possibly. He's just going to be an instant impact defender for Dan Quinn. And this team is probably going to look to get back to their, 2024, 2025 form where they made the NFC Championship and, you know, eventually lost to the Eagles. So they're going to try to, you know, take a few steps in the right direction, and Downs is going to help out tremendously.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't know about you guys, but to me, Washington having the season they had last year was the most predictable thing of all last season. They weren't just the oldest team in the league last season. They were one of the oldest teams in the history of the league. Like, they would have, if this was, 2016, they would have had an all-star team, but it was 2025. And, Von Miller and Marshawn Lattimore and Bobby Wagner just are not the impact players that they were 6-7 years ago. So they got to get some new bodies, young juice on defense. And Downs, I think the big thing with Downs, he was so, and we saw this a little bit with Andrew Luck too. Downs was so good right away his freshman year, and he was being taught. This is now year 3 that we're talking about him as a potential top 10 pick. There's probably a little bit of Caleb Downs fatigue among the general public. Just having to say the same thing for 3 years. Yeah, he's a great player. He's got great instincts. And then we're just nitpicking. Well, he's not a great athlete. Well, Xavier Watts wasn't either, and he's just fine. Is he going to be versatile like a Dylan Thieneman? No, but put him on the field. He's going to immediately make your defense better, not just on the field, but he's going to be a locker room guy. He's going to be an alpha day one as well. He'll be a defensive captain next year. He's exactly the type of player the Commanders need. Someone who's going to create turnover.
Yeah. And safety's not an athleticism-dominated position. If you watch tape, that becomes very clear. I mean, this to a point. Like, athleticism can be your aid if you're playing in that center field position, or like having that range is also very helpful if you don't quite have the anticipation of like those elite guys. Yeah, if you've got that speed and that explosiveness to get to where you need to go, yeah, that helps. And also down below, having that faster click and close speed, even if you're not processing it gives you a bigger margin for error. But overall, it's an instincts-dominated position. And also, I don't know where this narrative of Caleb Downs being a bad athlete came from.
Yeah,
watching him on tape, he didn't test. Where are people getting this from? Is it because he didn't test? He was their returner, and he looked explosive as a return guy. I think he does have that short area burst. I think he has incredible fluidity. Yeah, you could argue about long speed. I don't care about long speed. He's playing a position that is an IQ-based position. And for the positional value discussion, safety is what, if you have a prospect that has like almost no holes in his game, like there's not one area where you're like, oh, he's going to suffer here, then I see no problem with calling him a blue chipper. It's the same argument with Sonny Styles. And a couple drafts ago, Kyle Hamilton was my number 1 player. And I argued that the Jaguars could take him up there. Mm-hmm. And I thought it would have been a good pick. And I think they would rather have him than Trayvon Walker right now.
I mean, yeah, Kyle Hamilton has been a major difference maker. And I think, honestly, Caleb Downs could just be thrown in that same conversation of the difference that he's going to make his rookie year for this defense is going to be immeasurable in terms of what's being said about him now. Like Christian, like you said, it's just prospect fatigue at this point. People are just trying to nitpick things. It happened with Ted McMillan last cycle with some people, and now Ted McMillan, was one of the better rookie wide receivers, or the best if Ibuka slowed down towards the end of the season. So, but anyway, on to Arvell Reese at 8. I really like the fit. I like the upside. I like the fit in New Orleans. I like what he brings. I like him as an edge. I'll say that.
Yeah.
I prefer him as an edge. I don't really like what I see in terms of him dropping into coverage. He's an edge rusher that I'd trust to drop into coverage, but he's not a linebacker I'd want dropping into coverage all the time. So that's what I say about Arvell Reese. I think what he did to offensive tackles, the anchor that he possesses, just give him time. It might take 2 seasons to make the transition smoothly, but once he does, he should be a pretty dominant force off the edge of New Orleans.
Yeah. And at 8 overall, what a spot for Arvell Reese.
Yes.
Like it's great range for him, considering how everybody's talking about the Jets getting him at 2. Like, he rarely falls this far. He's the weirdest eval for me as an edge rusher, because you really got to feel it with him. Like, you got to take it upon yourself to project a lot with him, because I remember the Penn State game. He lined up at edge like one time in the first quarter. He murdered Drew Shelton with a cross chop, killed him, sent him grasping at air. And then all of a sudden he doesn't line up at the edge like for another quarter. Then the next quarter, he kills him with a cross chop. Same thing. No answers. And then all of a sudden he doesn't line up till the fourth quarter. He had 3 actual snaps at edge where he rushed the passer. And then later on, he killed him with a bull rush, I think. It's like what are your counters? I don't know what your counters are. I don't know. I've seen a lot of moves from him. And I think his bull rush is also very refined. He does that Jared Allen, how he does that corkscrew bull rush, where you're not only getting to the chest, you're not only converting speed to power, you're also rotating and trying to get hands off you and take advantage of the tackle's leverage. So you're trying to shed after your bull rush without having to combo it with another move. You're twisting him, you're twisting the offensive line off you. He has that down. He has these moves in the bag. How do you evaluate a guy that he just looks flawless every time he plays edge? But you don't know what's going to happen if you have to plan for him on a down-to-down basis and how he's going to react. But he's one of those guys that I love the athleticism. I think the 32-ish something arm length is a little deceptive, especially with the measurement discrepancies of the combine this year. They've been short on arm length for a lot of guys. I think he's probably got 33 something inch arms, maybe low 33.
It was 32. Really high 32. It was close enough to 33 where I think you can give it to him.
He's probably over 33 inch. You see the length with him on tape. I think he's a lengthy guy, and he moves the way that he does. He's somewhere as a prospect, not an NFL player. I'm not saying he's going to be this as an NFL player. Yes, the Micah Parsons comparison is there. He's a little bit of that if you gave him shades of Jared Verse, because I didn't see that bull rush with Micah Parsons that Arvell Reese has. So he's such a versatile guy in the way he is able to win with his athleticism. He can go through you. He can go around you. He's got incredible bend. I love him. He's my second favorite edge, but I have the same grade on him as I do on Ruben Bain.
Yeah, I talked about the Jets earlier as a spot where Reese, I would not want to see him because there's concerns about whether Aaron Glenn could develop him. I would have no doubt Brandon Staley would be able to develop Arvell Reese and unlock the best out of him. Staley may not be a head coach, but he's textbook, not a head coach, but a damn good coordinator. And coming from that Vic Fangio line, if he's being used wisely, you'll deploy him on the edge, and as an offense, you have no idea what he's going to do. Is he going to spy? Is he going to rush? Is he going to drop? You have no idea what's coming with him. He's just a total Swiss Army knife as an edge rusher. And for him being available for this spot for New Orleans, it's just I would love for them to take receiver here and double down on Tyler Shuck, but if Reese is available here, they should sprint this pick in.
Mm-hmm. I fully agree. And then Jermod McCoy at 9 to the Chiefs. I was personally lower on McCoy just because we saw nothing this entire cycle. I was very worried about the ACL. I didn't know if he was just sitting out for precautionary reasons, if he was sitting out because he just knew he was going to get drafted high, and he probably still will come draft day, and he had no reason to play for Tennessee. But I still would have liked to see some film on him. But what we saw the year before was a shutdown corner. If you're getting that in the NFL, and especially with, I don't want to say ACL tears are common, but they're not as big of a deal as they were 20 years ago, to where it could impact his career the same way. Will he lose maybe the slightest step in his straight line speed? Possibly. Will it be harder for him maybe to, transition from a back pedal to going downhill? Maybe. But that's something that we're going to have to find out watching him on the field. We won't know that until we see him play a competitive game of football. So getting him at 9, if you get the player that he was in 2024 to 2025, you're getting an absolute steal. He would have been, easily top 5 pick, maybe even top 3 in this draft, with a completely healthy season this last year at Tennessee, in my opinion. But I was just a bit precautionary on the ACL. Or what do you guys have on Jermon McCoy?
I want to bring up the nature of the cornerback position too. It's one of those positions that production tends to fluctuate year to year based on what your matchups are. So yeah, I agree with you on the uncertainty, just from a level of like, I didn't get to see him do it 2 years in a row. I don't know how he's going to, because now they know the secret's out on Jermon McCoy. So he was going to line up against the best receivers all the time. And it's one of those things where I like what he did last year. He was able to shut down like Ryan Williams, but now you're looking at Ryan Williams this year. There's a little bit of fog of war with there too. They move Ryan Williams to the slot, which I think is stupid. Like, he never showed that he can have that like catching ability through traffic. I don't like him being the bruiser in the middle. He should be your field stretcher at like Z.
Yeah.
But yeah, he showed ability against big receivers last year. The tape's hard to deny from last year. I would put Delane above him just because I think he's another like top tier cornerback prospect who we have seen it from now this year. And we saw it from him his freshman year too. So we do have 2 seasons of Mansour Delane playing at a very high level. There were some lulls in there, which do make you question it a bit. But I would rather go with the guy that I saw more recently. I do agree with that.
I'm going to read off we're going to play a little blind resume here. So Jermon McCoy at the combine was 6'6", 188, 9-inch ham, 31.25-inch arm. Mystery player, 6 1/8, 195, 9.25-inch ham, 31-inch arm. That was Quinyon Mitchell. And it is hard not to see a lot of similarities with their ability to play off, press, zone, man, speed, playmaking. Just McCoy, his tape in 24 was so good. And the concerns are fair that, it's the last time we saw him on the field was 2 years ago. And it had been, I think, before running his pro day, that would be 15 months without any sort of football activity. And the comp I've been kind of keeping McCoy in the same conversation as Will Johnson from last year as something to kind of go off of, because after the combine, Will Johnson was still considered to be a top 10 pick, and he had him slide into the early second round. But what really hurt Johnson was he didn't run. He didn't do any. He didn't test those concerns about his ankle, his health. McCoy goes out there, runs a sub 4.40, and just I don't have his vertical and broad on me, his exact numbers, but they were impressive as well. So I'm not as worried about the knee. The big thing for me is, how long is it going to take for him to get back to that same level? Because by the time he hits the field in September, it's going to be almost 2 full years without live game action. And practice and training is just versus game action. Real live action is a totally different animal, let alone the NFL against these receivers now who, college is pumping 25, 30 receivers every year that can play. So that, to me, that's the biggest question mark with me with McCoy. But I love this fit with the Chiefs. The reason why the Chiefs unraveled last season, and it was a trend I saw in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Their defense they have no defense. Nobody on that defense outside Chris Jones can make a play. And now with McDuffie, with the exception of McDuffie, but McDuffie's gone.
Yeah.
I always thought Jalen Watson was fine. I kind of thought he was vulnerable, But now with Watson and McDuffie both gone, who's going to cover? And Brian Cook's gone. Who's going to cover on defense? So if they're not going to go edge rusher, because that is probably their biggest need of all, is get someone who can win one-on-ones. If you're not going to get an edge rusher there and they're all off the board in this scenario, I think you got to address the secondary, whether it's Jermon McCoy. I don't think even Dylan Thien would be a bad pick, but we can lead into we're behind. We can go our next corner, Mansour Delane, going to the Bengals at 10. I'll let you start with that. Hank or Ben, whoever you want to go for it.
You a big Delane guy, Hank? Oh, you're muted.
I'm not a big Delane guy, but personally, I have some zone coverage concerns that I think might be seen in the NFL. I think sticky man coverage for sure. It's hard to ignore what he did at LSU this year. I didn't actually have him in the first round graded wise, just because there's still some lapses in zone where I think he can get flat footed. His eyes can just stick in the backfield, and the guy's getting a completion underneath. He's running behind him, but that's me just being really picky on a guy who had a phenomenal year in the SEC, had a phenomenal year at LSU. There's definitely a clear path for Mansour Delane being a number one corner for the Bengals. And this is a team that needs to improve their defense. I really like the fit. I would have preferred to see a front seven player here. I think there's still ways to go with the front seven. I probably would have went in the direction of Peter Woods, who's a guy I still really like in this cycle. But Mansour Delane, you can't argue with it. I know what the consensus is around him, and I'm more than happy to see him go in the top 15 just because I know my placement of him is very different from where everyone else has him. So more than happy with Delane going at 10.
Yeah, I didn't see those zone concerns. I would love to know I would love to watch some more games then of him. If there's like I'm wondering if there's a game that you saw that I didn't, that he did show a little bit of those lapses in zone that I'd be able to see more of. Because the ones I watched, I mean, I thought he looked perfect in zone. I thought he had great anticipation with his click and close. I thought his eyes were always in the right spot. You were talking about footwork a little bit. I guess I mean, like, I thought his footwork looked good, but I can't like firmly say that I have those same concerns about the footwork. But I would be very interested to know what the games that I could also continue to watch with him.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the game log that I keep track on everything, but I think it's honestly just me nitpicking, if I'm being honest. What you're saying is completely consensus, and just like when I watch Mansour Delane, I'd say 90% of the time see a great corner. There's just some things that I think are being overlooked a little bit, but he was also just really, really good this year. So yeah. I am personally higher on other guys. I think there's less questions for me personally. But there's still lots to like with Delane.
For sure.
Yeah, I think he's gonna be scheme dependent. I do think he's more comfortable in a man scheme than a zone scheme. But it's Al Golden really did some wonders with that Bengals defense despite his personnel. So yeah. I really like this pick. I do think you probably could go the front seven may be the bigger need, but Delane I think he's the best pure cover corner in the draft, especially with, as we mentioned earlier, Jermon McCoy not having any film out this season. It's going to be hard to argue Delane as not being the best pure cover corner in this draft with how darn sticky he is in man coverage. The only big concern I had with him was long speed, and he answered that at the combine. Yeah. He's in my top.
Shocked.
Yeah, that's to me by surprise too. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about him back in the back half of the first round. But Chris Johnson was in that same boat where the concerns you got with them is long speed. And Delane, and as it relates to Delane, he answered that. I don't know where you guys have on your board, but he's top 7 on mine.
I got him in top 10 grade for sure.
I had him around 30.
Okay, you're not the first person I've heard too. Like, no. I've heard a lot of people that also have some concerns about Delane, and he's also played for 4 years. So if he still does have those lapses in coverage, like, you'd like to see that fixed by now, because especially coming from a guy that in his freshman year he burst onto the scene, and then the next 2 years he just disappointed. Both of those years, he had 2 seasons after that breakout year, and now you got to ask yourself, like, is this just typical cornerback production fluctuation, or is this a guy that did he finally just figure it out? Did it click for him? And that's such a difficult question. You're playing with fire when you're taking cornerbacks up this high for that reason alone. Because a lot of the time we don't get that sample size from cornerbacks that are coming out in the draft. But either way, from a scheme standpoint, like you were saying, Christian, I totally agree. This is a perfect. Al Golden loves man coverage.
Yep.
And I also love the versatility of the player. I think he showed some chops against the run this year too. Like he wasn't a lockdown, like I'm going to, like a Keontae Scott, like I'm going to stack this block and I'm going to pop you with my hands and I'm going to be able to shed blocks from like offensive linemen. But he did show he could play the run and he tackles well, I think, too. So you could play him in the slot if you want as well. And they love guys like that over there. They love guys like Dax Hill. And like one of the guys that I loved who's kind of been up and down. What's the CTB, Cam Taylor Britt? I liked him too. And I had him scouted as like a possible safety or slot corner as well. So they like versatile players that you can move around into any spot depending on your week by week matchups. So I think they're going to like that from Mansour Delane. If he's going to go anywhere, I think the Bengals will be a great spot.
Yeah, and the 40 time he ran did nothing but help him. And, I completely expect him to prove me all the way wrong when he, steps on the NFL field for the first time. But next, first offensive lineman off the board, Francis Marinoa. I'm going to sound like a hater, but I'm much lower on this offensive tackle class. If you can even consider Marinoa an offensive tackle, because there's a world where he's a guard by week 8. There's a world where he's a guard by year 2. So there's still some questions for me with him. I think it's a very weak offensive tackle class, but getting him at 11 and seeing what he did in the college football playoff, he was very sound. And not only that, you're keeping him in Miami. This is a team that, the GM and, the new personnel there has talked. We're going to build through the trenches. We're going to get the big boys right. We're going to try to build this team the right way, which is the correct mindset. I think it's the mindset that, Tennessee should be going with their draft pick instead of Love, but instead you're looking to build maybe the defensive line. But Marinoa, I think there's decent enough value here at 11 that you can be happy whether he's a tackle or a guard. That, if the Cardinals sticked and picked at 3 and took Marinoa and he ended up at guard, it would have been, positional value wise, great. Not really, in my opinion, but 11 is a different conversation. This is a range where I feel comfortable if he has to play right guard in the league. I think you're happy getting, if you think it's the best guard in the class, getting him at 11.
Do you have him as your top offensive lineman, both of you guys?
I do.
No, I am a massive Emmanuel Pregnon fan. I'll say that.
You have him over Marinoa.
Wow.
I was
massive Pregnon.
Wow. I love that. Just stick to your guns.
Wow. My board's weird. Just wait till we get to some of these guys on like day 2 and 3, and I'm like, oh, you'll see it with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers pick. Like you'll see it there.
I was waiting for that one too. I cannot wait for us to get that pick. I'm gonna pick that one apart. But Marinoa, he's my tackle. He's my offensive lineman 3. I have Fano above him. Fano's my number 1, and I have Ioane above him too. I did not like Marinoa's tape in the playoff games. Those were the best front sevens that they faced. And like all year, you're going up against ACC guys. And I will say during the season, I commended him on how he played against Clev Lubin. Did you guys watch the Louisville game with Marinoa?
Yeah.
Dude, like I thought he cleaned up everything for the reps where he saw Lubin in front of him. It's like, I want to get the best of you because I know you're supposed to be good. And I'm good too. I'm going to show you. So I love that, but I felt like the opposite happened in the playoffs. I thought his technique looked worse. His footwork was sloppier. He had trouble getting his hands in the chest in pass pro. And in the run game, that's where I was most disappointed because it was one thing for him to be this mauler all year. I thought he was I thought he did a really good job of marrying up in space and being able to play gap and sustain those blocks, seal those lanes open but that was against like ACC defenses. I was waiting on him to get to these good defensive lines to see if that held up. I didn't feel like it did. I felt like his drive blocking technique was poor in some of those games. He played with worse leverage than he usually does. He's usually like a low to the ground type guy. Like I never had leverage concerns until the playoffs. Like and he also had trouble latching too. Like when you're drive blocking, you're doing one step towards your guy and then one step into his groin. So after that, you need to fire your hands into him. You got to get one hand up near the shoulder, like on the shoulder pad, and you got to seal that lane open. He couldn't hold that. Like there were so many times in this college football playoff where guys just infiltrated the rushing lane. Namely in the college football in the championship, I thought he had some moments like that. like I don't know. I got a little bit softer on him after that. I had like a mid first round grade on him, and then once the playoff tape, that was pending the playoff tape, and now I've got him more of a back half of the first round type guy. But I will say, this is a good spot to get him in an in the offensive line class, or at the top. You don't have like those guys, like your Joe Thomas up there. You don't have your Penei Sewell or Joe Alts. Like these guys that just have this history of good technique from rep to rep to rep, where you just easily project them as an NFL starter. My comp for Maui Noa was Eric Flowers, who I felt similarly about. Like, I love the athletic potential. I love the upside. And he had moments in the NFL where he was really good. I'm not saying that's how it's going to be with Maui Noa, because the dude is 20 and he's got these types of traits. Like, there's probably a bright future ahead for Maui Noa. I'm just saying, like, from a technique perspective, I want you to be a little bit cleaner if I'm considering you at the top of the draft. So that's a perfectly fine range, in my opinion, for Maui Noa.
Yeah, I'm a big Maui Noa fan. I did not. So Ben, I did not see those same concerns that you saw. That's definitely something worth going back and researching. But I thought he was really good against that Texas A&M defensive front. But as far as this is really the worst case scenario for Miami, because Caleb Downs is gone, McCoy and Delane are gone, and all the edge rushers are gone.
Yeah. So
Jeff Hafley, defensive mind, is going to want to build that defense up, especially their cornerback depth chart is not promising. But with all those defensive players off the board, under this scenario, Maui Noa will probably play guard, and it's hard to argue that, because you don't want Malik Willis getting the crap beat out of him every week as well. And their tackles are, between Patrick Paul and Austin Jackson, are, I would say, stable. You could do better, you could do worse, but Maui Noa here, I think his foot quickness is, I think, good enough. I don't think it's great, but I do think it's good enough to where he could stay a tackle at the next level. But I do think a move inside would maximize his skill set, and in Miami would be, especially if John Eric Sullivan, Hafley want to bring that Green Bay philosophy with them. Offensive lineman versatility is arguably the number one priority. You got to be able to play multiple positions. You got to play tackle. You got to play guard. Play outside, inside. And Maui Noa certainly fits that bill. Someone who could play either or.
Yeah. And then next we had the Cowboys. In my opinion, a bit of a shocking pick here. Kenyon Sadiq at 12. First, Kenyon Sadiq, I think by far best tight end in this draft. I think there's an argument for Delp. I think if he got more action at Georgia, he could have possibly been in these tight end one discussions, maybe even this high. But this still feels pretty rich for a Cowboys team that needs a lot on the defensive side. Of course, Delane is gone. McCoy is gone. That's pretty much worst case scenario at corner. But there's still guys like Thieneman, who I think could have been day one impact players for this defense, especially in your defensive back room. But if Kenyon Sadiq can get to his potential and become the kind of chess piece, offensive chess piece that he can be in the NFL, it could be decent enough value at 12. I think they should have, for sure. They could have, I think in my opinion, maybe even got him at 20. They could have maybe traded back a little bit if a team wanted to possibly jump up for a wide receiver. Yeah. But there's a lot of possibilities. They might be big Kenyon Sadiq fans in the Cowboys war room, but for me, it feels a little bit early, a little bit rich.
It is a Jerry Jones type pick, though, isn't it? Like, he would be the guy that's just like, oh, I like this guy. Let's get him on the team. Like, just for what? I feel like that's kind of how he was with CeeDee Lamb. I'm not saying like he's a CeeDee Lamb type prospect, but I remember at the time they had Amari Cooper, and was that when Michael Gallup was good? Who was their other receiver?
Gallup for ACL was really good.
Yeah, and like they didn't need a receiver, and a lot of people were shocked when they took CeeDee Lamb, and some people were against the pick, but now he's like the franchise guy. You can't really argue it. And the potential's so high with CeeDee. How many tight ends can run sub 4.4? Like, that's just crazy. That's insane.
I'm a big Kenyon Sadiq fan. He's got to be better as a pass catcher, but we talked about his inline blocking earlier. I think he actually could be that's why I like him with Cleveland, because I do think he could be an inline blocker. I like him put his hand in the dirt and get dirt. There's a lot of that on his Oregon tape, and you can line him up in the backfield, split him out wide. I think you can do almost everything with him. Think about what Mark Andrews was in his prime, minus the versatility because they had Isaiah Likely. But Mark Andrews, a twitched up Mark Andrews, is someone who he really could become.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as fit goes with Dallas, to me, if I were, it would be hard to pass on Dylan Thieneman here, because Christian Parker, when Christian Parker got hired away to go to Dallas, I may have shed a tear. Not going to get too emotional here, but may have shed a tear on that one, because Christian Parker is an absolute wizard. Think of what he did with Quinyon Mitchell, what he did with Cooper DeJean, even going back to Denver with Pat Surtain. Any defensive back Christian Parker touches, they're not just good, they're great. And Dallas needs players on that side of the ball who can make an impact, take the ball away, make stops. And Thieneman at Purdue, his 2 years at Purdue, 100 tackles both seasons. He then goes to Oregon and plays more in the deep part of the field, which is where I think he's best suited to play next level. But three level playmaker, takes the ball away, makes stops. Thieneman's a player I struggle to find a hole in his game. He does take some bad angles. He can get trigger happy when playing the run, but that's technique that can be coached up. As far as traits, skill set, it's really hard to find a hole in Thieneman, and he's the type of player that Dallas really needs on the back end. Jalen Thompson's a good player, but Jalen Thompson's not. He's not changing anything. He's not worth a point in Vegas. Dylan Thieneman is going to. I don't think there's much gap between him and Downs personally. I think Thieneman's that good.
Do you think the Cowboys not going DB is like a sign of them saying, you know what, we kind of believe in the second half of the season that Siobhan Revel had?
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, for sure.
Revel pre-ACL, he was going to be a first-round pick.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to be.
And he did really start to put it together as the season went along, which you kind of forget because that secondary was so bad.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe Christian, maybe Parker, maybe he really likes Zion Childress at nickel and moved around Bland back outside. Then you got your corners. They keep Malik Hooker. Donovan Wilson's still around, isn't he? They still have Donovan
Pretty sure.
Wilson? No, he's a Steeler. I think
he's a Steeler. Okay, so but they probably still do need another safety. But Malik Hooker and Jalen Thompson, he likes Hooker as the deep guy, Thompson as the strong side, playing more downhill. He may like those guys.
No, never mind. Sorry, Donovan Wilson's not a Steeler, but he's not signed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up was Mekhi Lemon. I will start this off because Mekhi Lemon by far I think was my favorite wide receiver in this draft. I love Mekhi Lemon. I think instant separator, instant QB friendly target, can create at all three levels of the field. Great hands. If he was the size that he is and he played small, it's a different conversation. But Mekhi Lemon plays the game like he's 6'3", 215, can go up and catch anything. You turn on the Iowa game, it is amazing tape. And did he struggle against, Notre Dame and Leonard Moore? Yes, but Leonard Moore is just Leonard Moore. He is going to be a top 5 pick as long as he stays healthy next year, more than likely. Mekhi Lemon, I think this is honestly amazing value. I think he's a top 10 pick. I think you just draft a good football player and let him figure it out. And getting him to the Rams, the rich just get richer. Puka Nacua, Mekhi Lemon, Devontae Adams, those three receivers paired with Matthew Stafford in the run game behind Kyron Williams, it's going to be a crazy year for Los Angeles, as this could be Stafford's last season. So they're really gearing up for this final push, this last gasp in order to win one more Super Bowl. And this will do nothing but help them. Very excited for what is to come with Mekhi Lemon in LA.
Yeah, and people talk about the Notre Dame game. A lot of that was Maava, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
If you I feel like when you really zoom in on him versus Leonard Moore, who by the way was traveling with him that game to the slot, that was a freaking dogfight. Like both of them, I thought neither of them was a clear winner. Like I remember this one rep where he fought off the press jam from Leonard Moore and he broke inside with like complete efficiency and he was wide open. Maava didn't throw in the ball and you could see Lemon kind of go like after the play was he's like, oh come on man, I got him this rep. You got to get me that ball. Got to let me do my work in space. like I wasn't deterred by it. In fact, what I saw is that he does have those hands that are able to hand fight and arm chop and swipe to get press off him. Like, and that's the concern that you have from guys in the slot. Like, are they going to be able to do that? And I thought he showed it in that game, which I love to see. But the thing with him is I did have a top 10 grade on him. I cooled on it a little bit. I went down to top 16. I think he might be 5'10". Like he measured in 5'11" at the combine, but again, they were generous on height in the combine this year. A lot of these players were getting like up to 1 inch, like generous. So he could be like 5'10". And if you look at the mold of players that are 5'11" or 5'10" and don't have the long speed that you would want from your like top receiver, the best guy you could really pick out is Doug Baldwin. So you're counting on a guy like Makai Lemon to break the mold, which I don't like banking on a player to break the mold. If I were to bank on, I would bank on Makai Lemon. But I see the JSN picks. JSN does have a little bit more height, and I feel like he's a little bit more density. He's closer to 200 than Makai is. Makai is 192. So my comp for him was Doug Baldwin. I don't know if I would take Doug Baldwin in the top 10, but I'd certainly take him high. Like, I love what Makai Lemon does on tape. He really is perfect. It's really only the lack of physical traits that's holding him back. And it's not like he doesn't have short area explosiveness. That guy explodes off the snap. He explodes out of his breaks. Like, that would be my main concerns if he can't do that. Then all of a sudden you're Jeremy Bernard and you're dropping like maybe a round. But yeah, I love Lemon. Great pick for them.
Yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Doug Baldwin. He fits right in that mold. And the Rams again. This is another worst kept secret. Rams going skill player. They're going all in. They were discussing trade for AJ Brown. That's who's arguably far and away the best receiver on potentially available this offseason. So yeah, they're embracing the all-in approach. This may be it for Stafford, at least while San Francisco gets rebuilt back up. Seattle lost quite a bit. We'll see if they bounce, if they get back to, or if they pull back a little bit or not. But the Stafford era, it's the sunset's near, and they got a year, maybe 2 left. So this is it's time to put all the chips in the center table and go all in.
Yeah, and then we had Vega Ione going to the Ravens at 14, which was, I think, a perfect replacement for Daniel Faalele. If he gets crucified on Twitter week in, week out for his play, is it deserved? A little bit, yeah. I mean, he's not great. He's getting a shot with the Giants with Harbaugh again. But if you want Lamar to be successful, you got to bring back, the dominant run game with Derrick Henry. You have one of the best backfield duos in the NFL, and it has to be dominant. They have 2 superstars back there, and they need to play like superstars. And Vega Ione will be able to open up those gaps, be able to open those holes for Henry, and even for Lamar. So this is a perfect fit, in my opinion. Again, the Ravens just sit at 14 and they let a very good offensive lineman fall into their lap that just happens to fit their need as well. They're going to make it work. I like the value. I like the fit. And I like what Vega Ione can bring to this run game.
Another area, I don't think he gets enough credit here. His pass protection. It's a lot of these guards are run blockers, but Ioane is impressively and probably underratedly stout in his pass protection. The quickness, the hips there's a little tightness, but once he gets locked on and latched, you're not moving him. No matter how big or how strong or how quick you are, when he gets a read on you and latches on, you're the one. The defensive lineman's the one going backwards. And I love this fit here with Baltimore. He really fits a Jesse Minter tough, gritty style of team that he's looking to build in Baltimore. Yeah, Ioane is a great fit. Fellas, I maybe or may not be back. I gotta hop on and join the Eagles war room. It's been a pleasure. Nice to meet you both.
Nice to meet you.
And Christian, thank you for joining us here.
Absolutely. I will see if I may hop back on at the back end, depending on when we get done. But appreciate it, fellas.
Of course, see you.
Thank you, Christian.
Yep. Yeah, so Sam Teat said that he would be stopping by about 7:45 for about a 30-minute cameo. This draft is cruising. So we give 8 minutes per pick, but it doesn't, humans don't take as long as NFL GMs to make picks.
Yeah. I even sent a message in there. I was like, you guys can take your time with these picks. We're about 5 behind right now, so there's no rush. So
Yeah,
But
so what pick were you guys?
we are on Cassius Howell right now,
Oh,
Okay, there
which
you go.
I think me and Ben are both kind of in the same mindset for the value
I've
here.
been waiting for this one.
I have been having my eyes on this one as well, just because I have not been a Cassius Howell fan since the beginning of the entire cycle starting in the summer. Ruben Bain has short arms. Cassius Howell has historically short arms. And in order to prove that arm length doesn't matter, you got to break these historical trends. And there's a lot of pressure on Cassius Howell, especially now that he goes in the top 15. He is going to have so much pressure to perform. Do you believe in his ability against the run? Do you believe in what he put on tape against guys like Marinoa, against guys like Trevor Gooseby, who are going to be those high-end, high-level picks that are going to start in the NFL from day one? Is this, a guy that I would take over maybe a Malachi Lawrence? No. Is this a guy I would even take over, just looking at my board, a guy like Keldrick Falk even? No. There's a lot of different ways I would have gone at edge in a plethora of different bodies and a plethora of different molds. I personally have just never seen him with Cassius Howell. I want him to prove me wrong because I'm all for arm length arguments getting shut down. But when it's historical, it's a major I got to see it before I believe it for me. So what do you have on him, Ben?
Yeah, I really like him as an ancillary piece, like a DPR. I think he could be a really good DPR because he does have a lot of moves in the bag. Like I do see the cross chop. I do see the spin move. He's able to hit you with that inside stab too. Like he attacks both angles. He's going to work either half of you and you're never sure which one. Obviously, he's better bending the corner, but he did struggle against those tackles that have better length, like Gooseby. And there were even some reps against Markel Bell where he was just able to engulf him just because he could get his hands on him first. And that hurts his ability to counter too, because it's like once he gets stuck, he struggles to get unstuck. Like if the first move doesn't work and you've got someone's hand, he's got someone's hand in his chest, he doesn't have that like thump in his hands to be able to like club it off effectively. And he also doesn't have the hands to really get to the chest himself and reposition himself. So I've seen a lot of reps where like he'll try and bend the corner's not there, then reps over, he gets stuck. And he doesn't have any speed to power. Like there's reps where it shows up against some tackles that have anchor problems. Like Austin Barber he killed Austin Barber. I love the tape against Austin Barber. But for the most part, he's one of those guys that I think he has a great first step because of how well he stacks his joints and fires off the ball. I don't think he has great natural burst. It's more so efficient. He's efficient off the snap. But if he doesn't get that first step, then it's not the same. It doesn't look the same.
Yeah.
So that will hurt his ability on those reps to really finish the rep with that closing speed that he has if they're able to catch him too early. So there's just a lot, like it's the athletic concerns with him. If he had longer arms, if he did have a speed to power element, I'd be much higher on him. And also, did you notice he has tighter hips than you might think from a guy that size? Like when he tries to cross face, sometimes he's a little bit labored in doing it. He's twitchy. But that Euro step where you're trying to work inside, or when you're trying to hit that cross chop and fake like you're going inside, it's a little bit tougher for him, I think. I think he labors a little bit with that lateral movement. And yeah, he's a net zero in the run game. Sure, he's got highlight reps in college sometimes, but I don't think he's the type of athlete that's going to translate as someone who's going to be able to set the edge, anchor against down blocks. I don't see him as – he's a good DPR. I don't see him as somebody I would take at number 15. I would have gone Akeem Mesidor, not even thought twice about it.
Yeah. And then, Jim, I think Sam is in the waiting room. He wants to talk about Howell. So.
Nah.
Let me in here, Jim.
Hey, Sam, thanks for popping in. I have so many windows open. I'm not actually looking at the podcast. I'm keeping the draft going. But did you have a comment about Cassius Howell there, Sam?
Yeah, I want to pop in and stick around for 30 minutes or so. But no, I think Howell's an interesting one because I agree with a lot of what you guys brought up about as far as like if he doesn't land the first punch or if someone gets into his frame first, the rep's kind of over. But at the same time, he's got probably the best ghost move by far of anyone in this draft class in terms of that ability to really get low and dip around guys in the outside track. Would like to see more inside counters. It's really interesting like, having him and R. Mason Thomas in the same draft class, where I think R. Mason Thomas is maybe more straight line speed. I think Hal is more effective in terms of burst off the line. Yeah. R. Mason Thomas is more speed to power. Hal definitely has more bend, I think, at the top of the rush. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be taking him top half of the first round. I agree, but I think there's a lot of like you can poke enough holes in like that second group of edge rushers as far as like, hey, there's concerns about Keldrick Falk and like where will he play? Will he actually be like a high rate pressure kind of player at the next level? Like Hakeem Mesidor is in his mid-20s. When you're in your mid-20s playing against guys who in college football are a lot of times like between 18 to 22 years old, that can really increase your chances of having a high success rate later in your career. So I think there's enough holes you can poke in a lot of these guys where you can say, okay, if Howell ends up being back into the first round ahead of some of those players, it's justifiable. I wouldn't want to do it because I don't draft historical outliers, so I wouldn't be taking him, Mesidor, or Armis Thomas. I just wouldn't be doing that in the first round. Yeah. But at the same time, he's one of my favorite players to watch in college football, so I'm kind of like juggling two things here, trying to make the case for and against him. He didn't seem for a while there like he was inevitable. Every week he had some huge play, it felt like, for a while, and just didn't have the end of the season you were hoping for.
And JT really likes Cassius Howell.
Yeah, I have seen JT has been mocking Howell to the Bucs for a while. I will say, if he went up against Gooseby and did what he did like throughout like the entirety of the year and just ghost moved him like 4 times and got 4 pressures, like I'd be so much higher on Cassius Howell. And I want him to prove me wrong so badly. But next, Jordan Tyson to the Jets. Good value if he's healthy. Everything physical wise looks good. He has a workout coming out soon that everyone's eyes will be on. I think personally this is great value. This is a day one good weapon for Geno Smith. If he is going to be the quarterback all season, that's going to be another thing to discuss is what's their quarterback going to look like. But Jordan Tyson is going to give you 5 seasons of good production as long as he stays healthy. And getting him at 16 would have sounded crazy at the beginning of this cycle, but unfortunately he did start dealing with injuries throughout the year. So what do you guys have on Tyson?
Yeah, I mean, I love Tyson. Obviously, it's hard to dislike the route running. I love that short area burst that he's got. Like when he makes that step into the like at the top of his stem, he covers a lot of ground with just that first step alone. I think he's got all the traits that you like from a great route runner. He's got those deceptive eyes. He's got that indicator step. Like anything that you want to say about route running, he does a great job. He paces his routes well. He's shown to be better with the ball in his hands in the past, but I still never saw him as like this guy who, if you're going to try and arm tackle him, he's not going to be able to really have that lower half strength to be able to shed that. And I don't think he's like super creative in space to the point where I would call him a weapon with the ball in his hands. And I do worry about the physicality too against press. I do think sometimes you could jam him a bit. And he played against Big 12 competition all year. He didn't face a lot of good. In the one corner he did face that was really good, actually, I thought was Kelly Jones in the Mississippi State game. And Kelly Jones had some good licks on him when he pressed him. So I worry a little bit about that. I worry about the physicality. I worry about his ability to win and catch through contact. But it's just hard to argue with a guy that's that good of a separator, that good of a route runner. He's certainly worth taking in this range. Falling all the way down to 16, in my opinion, if he's healthy, is a steal.
I think we often use the term route technician to discuss guys who are not super athletic. It's kind of like a catch-all for some of those guys. He's a route technician, though. He's not a freak athlete, but he's certainly not like that kind of like what I picture when I think of route technicians, a guy who just separates purely based on like the skill set, but without the actual level of athletic ability to kind of elevate beyond that point. He certainly passes the threshold in terms of athletic ability, but I don't think he's that outstanding in individual categories outside of maybe the pure technical elements of the game, where I'm like, this guy is going to be wide receiver 1 next level. I don't really see that for him. If I had like throw a bunch of guys together from past couple classes, like certainly when JSN came out, I know he obviously fell in the draft, but like JSN for me was like top 10 players so that year. I would grade a guy like that much higher than Jordan Tyson. Like I've got Carnell Tate higher. Tyson to me and McKelliman, neither are perfect prospects, so they're kind of bundled a little bit together for me in this draft. Tyson, it's just with the injury history. Like I try to avoid drafting players. Like in my personal philosophy, I would try to avoid drafting guys who have injury histories or who have builds where you could see them sustaining future injuries, especially this high in the class, because it's just a way to like, it's about job security. Let's be honest. Like job security is a massive thing for GMs and for coaches. Most of the time you want to draft to hit some home runs, but you also want to draft to avoid losing your jobs. And to me, Tyson is a good player, certainly, and would be worthy of a first round pick. I would just be nervous taking him because of some of the stuff that comes on the back end in terms of the injury history, in terms of the inability to finish games at times. And I don't know about I wouldn't describe him as soft per se. I think he battled through injuries certainly at times this year, showcased his willingness to compete despite not being 100%. But there are guys like him, and even I'll throw out Antonio Williams at Clemson, because I'm a Clemson alum. I've seen the guy get hurt nonstop. There's just so many injuries and so many minor injuries, plus a couple major ones, that would make me really uncomfortable investing a first-round pick in this player if I had to make the decision.
Yeah. All right. And then next up, we had Spencer Fano to the Lions. A lot of rumors with Penei Sewell making the switch to left tackle for this next season. So is this the right tackle of the future, or is he going to kick inside and possibly play center for Detroit? What do you think, Ben?
I'd imagine. I would certainly try him at right tackle. If Sewell can do what Wirfs did and switch over to left tackle and still maintain that production that he's always had, then I see no reason to move Fano out of position. That's really something that you're going to have to decide in camp, I think, is where he best fits into your scheme. Because, yeah, he could also play center. He worked out at center. And I love him in the run game. I think he marries up well. Yeah, you do worry a little bit about the anchor and the drive power and the gap scheme, but I thought he showed really good technique in drive blocking. I thought he was able to get that first and second step into the lineman with efficiency. I thought he was able to seal those gaps, because for a guy with anchor concerns, I think he does have some really good grip strength and ability to sustain those blocks. So I loved his run blocking tape overall, and I think his technique in pass pro is really good as well. He's one of the more technically sound guys in the draft, and that's really hard to argue against. Like the only things you could really say about him that are mostly negative are just the length and maybe the anchor a bit. Like I saw a lot of what I saw with Troy Fautanu with Fano, and I love Fautanu, but then you see him go to the Steelers and he's taken a little bit to kind of hit that ceiling that we all know that he has, just because you're going up against NFL athletes who have better speed to power, who have better natural, well-dispersed strength all across their body. So it's a bit of an adjustment. So there's reason for pause with Fano, but he's my favorite lineman in the class, and I can't argue with taking good linemen in the first round that deserve to be there.
Yeah, taking good linemen's always a benefit. You can never have enough of them because guys inevitably get hurt. I don't know that center would make a lot of sense for the Lions, because they did go out and sign Cade Mays. It wasn't a massive deal. It's a little over $8 million per year, 3 years, 25. But Cade was pretty solid for Carolina last year, so I wouldn't expect him to be competing for that role. I think you're looking at, in this scenario, the philosophy being either competing with Larry Borom for right tackle or maybe Christian Mahogany even for left guard. I think just the idea is like upgrade that offensive line, get as many good bodies in them as possible. I don't know that I would take Fano here for this team in particular because of how things kind of set up with that line. They have a lot bigger bodies on the line right now too. And I think that Fano's a guy, like when I first watched him this summer, I thought I was like looking at like a tight end a little bit. Like it was just a very like Darnell Washington sized individual. He's added some weight since then, but it's just not, I don't think maybe the body type for this organization that'd be the perfect fit, especially considering they have enough quality people on the line where they don't necessarily need to draft an offensive lineman right away.
Yeah. And the Cade Mays signing definitely did slip my mind. He's for sure got center locked down in the future. So this is more than likely you're gonna stick him at tackle and let him fail if he even fails. Next up was Dylan Thieneman going to Minnesota at 18. Really like the fit. So many people will call this, like the Harrison Smith replacement, but in reality, there's two very different things you're asked to do, in my opinion. Harrison Smith was great. I think Dylan Thieneman can do anything you need him to. I like him in that deep role. I like letting his instincts play. I like his range. A very good year at Oregon that kind of got slept on just because when he was at Purdue, he was literally asked to do everything. He was the guy on defense. And when he's finally on a really good defense, he doesn't stand out as much because he doesn't have to do everything. So going to Minnesota and that Brian Flores defense, I think will be great for him. And this is a very good fit. I think Thieneman is a sick player. I think he's honestly pretty close to Downs' skill level, closer than people give it credit for. I still think Downs is the better player and the better safety prospect, but getting a good safety prospect at 18, no complaints from me from it.
I agree. It's hard to argue with a versatile safety like him being in a Brian Flores offense. He'll know how to utilize him. You could play him close to the box. You could play him in that center field type role. He's got all the instincts. He's incredibly physical. I think he is a very solid wrap-up tackler. I've heard that disputed, but I think he's somebody that you could trust to square up to guys, run his feet through the finish, and he's not afraid to go into the clutter to do that. So I just love a guy like that playing in the box. He's got enough functional strength to stack blocks too. Like you said earlier, he's not always consistent about the angles that he takes, but I see him as somebody that contributes in the box. He's got incredible athleticism to play like anywhere he really needs to. He's a great player. I totally agree that he's a very slept on guy in this class, even for somebody that's being consistently mocked in the first round.
A very unique career path too. He started off as like this true single high, like deep post safety in Purdue, and then finally you're in Purdue, it's a little bit more versatile. Then at Oregon, you're playing box, nickel, two high, single high. You're getting every look you could possibly want. Really just a great defensive chess piece. One of the things Harrison Smith did really great in his prime was the ability to disguise where he was going to in coverages before the NFL got really heavy into like the rotational coverages and stuff like that. Smith was kind of the master of disguising. That was more in the Zimmer days though than Flores, but I think that you could get some similar versatility with Thieneman and his ability to play multiple roles and be able to really shift the defensive picture post snap and kind of confuse quarterbacks.
Yeah, just a really good fit overall. And then we went to a very shocking pick, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Jacob Rodriguez at 19 to the Panthers. This is a guy who I think could have been, as long as I'm not forgetting the picks that they have. They do have the 51st pick. This feels like a guy that in reality could be there for their 51st pick. You know, he has tested better than everyone thought. Does that testing show up on film? Not in my opinion, but the athletic traits are there. The production, especially this year at Texas Tech, was very good for Jacob Rodriguez. But in my opinion, 19 feels a bit rich for Carolina getting their middle linebacker of the future. I think personally, there's still good wide receiver talent on the board. You just go with the receiver until you get one that hits as good as Tet does, and then you have a 1-2 punch that's pretty good. But where are you guys at with Jacob Rodriguez at 19?
Well, I'm not at number 19 with him. I feel like I'm kind of the low man on Rodriguez still because I've had the same grade on him for a long time. The testing didn't really change much for me. I didn't think he looked like a bad athlete on tape personally. I did see a lot of flashes in every phase, and I think that's what people are buying into. I also saw deficiencies in every phase that scare me a little bit. I'll start with coverage. I think he does a great job of reading the quarterback's eyes. I think he has good click and close anticipation when he needs to make a break on the ball, or even that shows up as a tackler too, I think. But I think he has trouble sensing routes that are breaking behind him. I think he has trouble squeezing those routes with appropriate timing. Like it's the zone principles, like of being able to notice when something is coming your way and just not cover grass and make sure you're covering a man. I think he does struggle with that a little bit. I don't think he quite has the size to man up against tight ends and be incredibly effective. In the run game, yeah, you see flashes. Like he obviously has some highlight tackles. He's one of the most physical players in this class. So that's huge for him. I don't think he really has that anchor ability against those run blocks again. I feel like I've been talking about that with a couple guys now. Like he gets scooped downfield very often on tape, and I don't think he's able to stack very well and really square up with linemen, remain there, and get in position to be able to shed those blocks either. Like I just don't think his run game tape is as good as being made out to be. He's being made out as this like no deficiencies, like every down linebacker that does everything. But I worry about him in the run game. I worry about that strength. And as a tackler, I don't think he wraps up very well. You see him fall off guys a lot. He kind of leads with the shoulder a bit. He tends to dive and leave his feet at times. So he'll make highlight tackles just because he's fearless. He's fearless, and he has that physicality where he wants to be the bigger dog, and it wins a lot. I mean, he got a lot of tackles last year. He's shown he can do it. There's smudges in every level of his game for me with him. But there's enough there. He's also so new at the position. When you stack him up against like other linebackers that have been playing there since like high school, he's very new. He used to be a quarterback. So you got to give him a little bit of upside, even though he's a 23-year-old player. Like you got to think that there is more development to come. Guys like that, I would just rather take around the round 3 range, especially considering how the value of the linebacker position.
I agree with a lot of what you said. I think my issues with him really is that he doesn't have the ability to stack and shed blocks at the same level as someone like Josiah Trotter or CJ Allen. Just doesn't have that pop in his body because he doesn't have the same level of mass as those guys. He is a great motor player. He's a very smart player. I agree with you. I think he was faster on tape. I think maybe not faster, maybe quicker is the way to put it on tape than what he got credit for. I didn't think the range was as big as an issue as some people brought up.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think coverage is a big issue for me. I don't see immediate man coverage upside in terms of the versatility you're looking for. When I think about a first round linebacker, I think you're looking for someone who has that 2-level versatility, who can really be a math changer for your defense in terms of his ability to cover up the seam, to go from being mugged up in the A gap to make a deep drop in zone. I think you got to be able to have that kind of range and special athletic ability. I don't really see that with Jacob Rodriguez. Again, a really good player, but in my opinion, that's more of a day 2 prospect than a day 1 guy.
Yeah. And then what was the full trade details for the 49ers move up?
So the full trade details, the 49ers traded 2 4th-round picks, and they received a 5th and a 7th back.
And then they swapped 20 and 27. So the 49ers move up, get a good weapon in Casey Concepcion. Guy who can definitely stick on the outside, with the film that we saw. I used to say, he's probably a slot guy only in the NFL. Then I went back and rewatched him. Like, no, he can be pressed. He can stick on the outside if he absolutely has to. Will it be different in the NFL? Yes, it's gonna be a lot more physical, but he can beat the press coverage that I saw. And the 49ers need a weapon. Of course, Omar Cooper Jr. went. So if they sticked and picked, you're looking at currently Denzel Boston, Chris Bell, Jeremy Bernard. And I feel like, at that point, it's a different tier, with Chris Bell, especially with his ACL. I was a big fan before the injury, but move up, get a good wide receiver in the future, especially with how Ayuk has turned out. I don't hate it.
Yeah. He's probably one of the more mixed bag players in the draft in terms of outcomes. Like there are moments where I see similarities to Mecole Hardman. There's other moments where I see Jalen Waddle. So it's really tough. I think the route running's inconsistent. Like, he does show a little bit of nuance at some points, but there's also moments where he's just like, I'm faster and I'm more explosive than the guy in front of me. I can afford to round off this break if I want to. I don't care. The ball skills concern me a little bit, but yeah, he's great with the ball in his hands in space. That's also hard to overlook. I'm not quite like first round with him, but we're talking about a draft that doesn't have probably 32 first round graded players in it. So if you really like what he can bring to the table, and if you're a team like the 49ers, a perennial playoff team who can afford to take swings like this, you got other guys waiting in the wings too, like Pearsall. I don't think it's the worst decision in the world. It's not what I would have done, but if you like the guy and you want to take him there, it's not something I'm going to argue.
Yeah, I think I'm fine if the team has a vision for it, and I do trust Kyle Shanahan to make the most of this player. But in my personally, I don't feel great about him even on the outside. Really, I don't like this player type very much. If I'm going to draft someone like this, I prefer to draft him as like a true slot receiver in the day 2 range versus taking them around 1. I just don't think we have a ton of guys who have recently panned out this way, and the players who have, though, like a name like Jalen Waddle was taken so high in the draft, there was a massive consensus of confidence around that player. Versus Casey Concepcion, I think it's more of a mixed bag, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
I think for San Francisco, it's one of the few places where I think that could work. But I don't, and personally, I'm not a huge fan of taking Casey Concepcion round 1, just because I think there are more limitations out there than maybe have been discussed so far. I prefer him in the nickel or in the slot role. I wouldn't put him outside too much. I think he's more of the ball in his hands and create kind of guy. I think that there's a lot of the route nuances he needs to develop right now. And I do think there'll be some more issues with him size-wise in terms of being able to win the catch point than we've seen in college. Because he's been able to separate well with athletic ability, but there's a lot of development that needs to happen with him right now.
Yeah. And then
so I just want to poke a little bit at the Casey Concepcion. So I wanted to make sure that my name got mentioned on the Bills War Room. So Hank and I are drafting for San Francisco. Hank, from this point forward, you get to make the rest of the 49ers picks. But I wanted to make sure that the Bills War Room couldn't draft Concepcion. So that was me moving up to snipe the Bills.
Makes sense. Sam, Steelers fan, right? So you want to take it with Omar Cooper first?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy. I was going to be happy with Omar Cooper. I was going to be happy if it was Monroe Freeland or Caleb Lomu. I would have taken any of those selections. So long as it's not Ty Simpson, I'm going to be a happy man on draft night. No, Omar Cooper, I don't think you're looking at a guy who can ever be a wide receiver 1. But I'm really fine with that, considering what the Steelers' current wide receiver room looks like with DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman, some big bias on the outside. Get Omar Cooper, who's a really tough, fairly compact player who's not going to be, I don't think, a 1,200-plus yard receiver, but he can get you that consistent, maybe wide receiver 2 type numbers over someone like Pittman. A guy who's going to be a solid route technician, who's going to consistently get open. The Oregon tape this year, I think in particular, was, if I'm remembering correctly, really nice tape in terms of his ability to separate and create against tight man coverage. So I'm looking at a guy who's going to be able to give you a lot of wins at the first to second level in terms of the route running, and then you have someone like DK Metcalf to take the top off the defense. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this player. I think this is not a home run, but it's maybe a double, and I'm willing to take that for this offense right now. And so I think he's a good player, not a player I put in like that. I have only 13 first-round grades this year. I'm not putting him up in that tier by any means, but I think it's a solid player where you can justify taking him in the 20s and just know you're going to get a plug-and-play guy who's got a pretty high floor as a receiver.
Yeah, I'm not quite there with I thought the route running was solid, but it's really hard to judge based on his tree. Like he was only ever running routes, like out routes, and they would use him as their bubble screen guy or just their regular screen guy, just running smoke routes. But then he'll have a moment where he'll run a slot fade and he'll perfectly swipe the hands away of the guy pressing him and then be able to get that separation to just get even with him and get just enough to make a back shoulder grab. I think he has those flashes. It's like the same thing I saw with Burden last year. Burden had a limited route tree, and I did see him round off some breaks too and stuff like that where I had questions about the deceptiveness, but I do love the highs of Omar Cooper. I think he's a good lateral athlete. And he's got that strong lower body. He kind of runs like Harold Fannin did last year. He's like a high cut, high legged type guy. And there's so much of him that it's kind of hard to cut him down. I feel like he draws a lot of power from the ground and he's able to build speed pretty quickly. So I'm a big Cooper fan. I would have taken him over Concepcion with that last pick if I were the 49ers. And he also slots right in to a team where you have two guys that are probably going to be playing on the outside most of their reps. So if you ever want to run 11 personnel, then you got Omar Cooper out there. That's a pretty good trio of guys that you got to reckon with.
Yeah, I think he fits really nicely in with DK and Michael Pittman, who is now a Pittsburgh Steeler. I don't mind this pick at all. I never thought that the War Room would have gone with Ty Simpson. I think that's kind of likely on draft night, whether, Sam is happy or not, but I still think more than likely it's not going to be a QB. There's still some Will Howard belief within the organization, I feel. But next up, Peter Woods at 22 to the Chargers. This is just, for me, BPA. I still love Peter Woods. I still think there's a clear vision with Peter Woods. I still think he has that ability to be the player we saw freshman year, sophomore year, because he regressed all 3 seasons? A bit, yes, but it hasn't been, in my opinion, this alarming regression to where we need to start considering him a second-round pick. People like Daniel Jeremiah completely out of the first round in some of his mocks. I still think Peter Woods is a top 10 player in this class. I don't think you can ignore what he's done in the years before. And getting him at 22, although the interior of the O-line is very bad for the Chargers, and I personally would have thought about Emmanuel Pregnon here, I think this BPA, the player you're getting here, is very, very good.
Yeah. Yeah, you were talking about Peter Woods up at 10 for the Bengals, I remember. Yeah, he's got some reps where he's got some of the best stack peak shed highlights, I think, in the draft. And he's so explosive when he does that, too. Every move he makes is so efficient. I feel like he's got really good body control when he's playing the run game. He knows exactly where he needs to be. He's efficient with his movement. His hands are quick and they're aggressive. So I love the highs. Of course, I do worry about that lower half strength and the length and how that's going to translate to the NFL. So there's a little bit of that concern with me. Yeah, and again, same with the pass rush. He's got some moments. He's got some highs as a pass rusher. He's shown a lot of the moves necessary. Some of them don't always look as efficient as they should, though. It's almost like he's plotting a bit, like he doesn't feel confident in his own ability. So it's a weird eval for me because I do love the highs. And if I went just off of his highlight cut up tape wise, then I probably would have him up where you do. I've got him more as this range type of player. I think this is a good range for him.
So there was always some more things people were going to have to address with Peter Woods. I'm a Clemson alum, so I watch a lot of Clemson Tigers football. He always going to have really short arms in comparison to what you traditionally look for a first rounder. I don't think that got mentioned too much in the summer because people were just kind of enamored with the talent. I kind of alluded to, I think his run game is actually better than his work as a pass rusher. I think that's highly underrated. If you look at, you can go back to the LSU game, watch him against Josh Thompson, watch how many times he wins in that game. It doesn't make an impact on the play because the running back's just not going that direction. But he's able to win a lot of those one-on-one moments. I blame Tom Allen, frankly, in the defensive scheme for a lot of the issues that happened this past year and a lot of the regression across that defensive line. It just was not like what he was running was just not a great fit for a lot of these guys and didn't really help them improve at all. I have a long rant about Tom Allen I won't go on to for this podcast, but with Peter Woods, they were playing him inside a lot, like deep inside a lot, and he had dropped weight for this year as opposed to like earlier in his career, we had more weight and they were playing him outside. So he never really got the natural fit for like where his body type should go along the line. I think he'll be a better pro than when he showcased this past year at Clemson, but I still think that the mid-teens to like mid-20s is probably more of the sweet spot for him than taking him like in the top 10 or so picks, just because there's some more physical limitations with him than I think you would look for an ideally like that prototypical defense, like defense tackle one who nowadays would be getting $25 to $30 million per year on a contract extension.
Yeah. And then 23, just a situation where the rich get richer. The Philadelphia Eagles get Monroe Freeling, just falls into their lap. And, everyone this cycle has been talking about, I feel like even last cycle was, who are the Eagles going to pick, develop, and have be their next cornerstone tackle? Well, this is the answer. Will he maybe make the switch over to right tackle? Because Lane Johnson's right side is going to be a bit more of a faster need than Jordan Mailata's left side, maybe. But even then, Freeling has no pressure on him this season to perform. I think, of course, if there's an injury, he's got to step in. I don't see him kicking inside the guard. This is just a guy you feel very confident about developing. And for a guy who I thought should have returned to school to get that extra year of development, getting that extra year of development in the NFL in one of the better offensive line situations in the Philadelphia Eagles could not have worked out more perfectly for Monroe Freeling. I love the selection. I think, honestly, he's in consideration as early as 6. So getting him at 23 is a pretty good selection.
Yeah, he's got some of the highest upside in the class. I wish Stoutland were still here. I wish Stoutland were still there to work with him and try and get the best out of him. But yeah, people always talk about him. I hear a lot of Browns mock talk. Everybody talks about him up at 6. I always kind of felt like this is probably around more so where he could land if the Browns don't take him. The Browns are really the only team that I hear up in that range being considered to take Monroe Freeling, just because left tackle is more so the position they're looking at. But yeah, Monroe Freeling, obviously high potential. I do have a lot of issues with his tape, but it's really hard to argue with the athlete. I think he has incredible anchor. I think his stopping power in his hands is just great. When he does get his hands inside, he can just freeze you. But I do worry about where he targets with his hand. I think he hits wide a lot with his punch. I think he shows a little bit of leverage concerns with me too. I worry about him being able to stay consistently low. I don't love his base on a down-to-down basis. And for as explosive as he is, I don't think he has that lateral agility that you really like from an offensive lineman, like a guy like Maui Noah has. Like when he has to actually mirror one-on-one, sometimes I do worry about him being able to stay in front and anticipate. You got to really be able to anticipate if you don't have that skill set. But again, that's more so high upside player. I think there's 3 outcomes. You're either going to be the next Colton Miller, which a lot of people are talking about. A lot of people didn't like the Colton Miller pick at the time, but Colton Miller developed into one of the best tackles. You could become Spencer Brown, who kind of didn't have a major skill set when he came into the league. He was more so a project, but he developed into this high-level run blocker. And Freeling does have moments like that where he's able to marry up in space and take you to the ground and just sustain that block so well. But the low end is Tyler Guyton. Tyler Guyton has kind of not found a spot for himself. He doesn't have an area where you're like, oh, Tyler Guyton can really ball in this area of the game. So, and now Cowboys fans are even talking about like maybe moving on from him at this point after 2 years. So there's just it's another mixed bag player that I worry about, but I do think this is the right range for him.
And then next up was Caleb Lomu to the Browns. So Ben, you want to take this one as the Browns fan?
I'll let somebody else lead off.
We should maybe welcome Jordan here.
Jordan.
Let's say
acknowledge the fact there's another person on screen now.
Yes. So also I am basically down here as well. I love that I appeared during the Caleb Lomu pick because I'm a big Caleb Lomu guy. I'm actually in my office right now, so I might have to go off camera every once in a while if somebody asks me something because I'm actually off work, but I know there will be people asking me stuff. So biggest thing with Caleb Lomu, and like maybe it does kind of feel a little bit like crazy to some people right now, especially looking at like the O tackles. But as you can see, we went on an O tackle run down the board. Like everybody's afraid, and I think this is actually close to how the actual draft's going to go. I think a lot of people are pushing the idea that Caleb Lomu is going to fall into the second. I personally don't think so. I think all of this stuff that people consider, like if you listen, it's funny because if you listen to national media, most people will tell you like, oh, Spencer Fondo has like all this power. And then most of the people who like watch him a lot and like a lot of fans are kind of like, I don't know where that power really is as much, but where that power is actually on the other side of him in Caleb Lomu. And I love Caleb Lomu's game a lot. I think he's just getting overlooked a lot in this process. He kind of became boring compared to a lot of these other guys. And he was like in between like the Caden Proctors and the Monroe Freelings, where he doesn't have as much like genetic ability as like a Monroe Freeling, but he doesn't have as much of the size and the pure like skill set that Caden Proctor has. But I honestly think he's somewhere. Personally, I like Caleb Lomu more than I like Monroe Freeling. I know it's a crazy take for some people. And I like him a lot more than Caden Proctor. I think this is exactly the idea of where he should go. And if you're the Browns, you were hoping Monroe Freeling fell to you because that's more of like the type of player you're looking for. But I think Caleb Lomu is awesome, and I think he'd still be a really good fit with the Browns.
Yeah, I don't see the same like power.
Yeah, I figured.
I think he struggles with his anchor a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
He's another guy that also hits wide a lot with his hand placement, I think, and he struggles to refit throughout the rep. So I worry about those two things like in and of each other. And I don't see, and if you're going to compare him to Freeling, I also don't see that same grip strength that Freeling has. But it's another one where you got to factor in that he's 20. He's still developing as like a physical presence. And a lot of linemen, as they continue to get older and actually reach their athletic prime, like there's probably more anchor traits that are going to come through that development. There's a lot unknown with Lomu that I don't love the current product right now, but I do see the athleticism. I don't see the edge in the run game at the very least. Like I don't project him as somebody that's going to be a gap blocker. I do think he has the traits to become a bit of a zone blocker, but I don't see the highlights in his tape that I do see with Freeling, like being able to actually square up to somebody on the move and then run your hands into him and finish that block and just continue. Like, I don't know. He's a hard guy to really talk about because he's 20. He's 20 years old. I don't feel like we're seeing the Caleb Lomu that we're going to be seeing in like 3 or 4 years. As it stands, though, I wouldn't take him here.
I'm a sucker for a first step, man. If that first step's there, and I think his first step is there so much of the time, it's just about you brought it up perfectly. Like his hand placement gets like misconstrued a lot. I think it ends up happening a lot more with like bigger end tackles. Like it's a similar problem with a lot of guys who are like 6'6" and up. I think that's something that can ultimately be coached into him. And I think like we've only scratched the surface of what he's actually going to be. But I definitely see the points that other people have towards Caleb Lomu. I just think I think it's like too interesting of a player at too thin of a position to not consider in that first round range.
True.
And then Ben, I got
the offensive tackle run. I think Hank, take it away. Tell us what we got come up here.
I was going to say, just a quick question for Ben. Do you prefer the Carnell Tate Caleb Lomu pairing at 6 and 24, or would you have preferred, let's say, Monroe Freeling and more than likely Denzel Boston right here, according to consensus? Which of those two pairings would you have preferred as a fan?
The only one of those picks where I think the value actually lines up with where it would be in an ideal draft would be Denzel Boston down there at 24. Ideally, what I would want is for the Browns to trade down if they're going to take somebody like Lomu or Freeling. I mean, not Lomu, but Freeling at 6. I don't know, because the problem that I have is I don't like reaching on positions of need just because they're positions of need, and I don't have Freeling graded up there in that top 10. This is more the range I think he should go. But again, I can't argue with filling need where you need some like young players to become the future of your team. We're so good. The Browns are so good on defense. They don't really have many holes. Yeah, there's spots where you could argue that maybe you could take a guy like Delane to play the slot, but that's really just kind of a luxury pick, a luxury that the Browns don't have. You could take a guy like Bain to pair up against Myles Garrett, because the other guys you have are more so run-oriented, like McGuire or Alex Wright. But all in all, you need offense really badly. You have a premier pick. If you don't love the value up at the top, just trade down a bit and then just take best guy available.
And Sam, did you have anything to add on Lomu? Did you want to kick us off with Caden Proctor?
No, I think we can move on to Caden Proctor here, so we don't fall too far behind in the live picks. But it's really, I think I've seen some people float around the idea of the Bears having the offensive line because they have the injury to Ozzie and they've got the question marks on the left side of the line. But like, I don't know where. I think they liked what they got from Ozzie before he got hurt this past year, and so I just don't know if they're really, is that worth taking them in the first round if you're looking for like a 1.5 a year Band-Aid type player, because it's kind of what you need for him to get back and healthy. The rest of the line they feel pretty good about, I'm sure. So I don't really know the immediate path to play. I mean, he'll start, I presume, definitely at left tackle, but again, I don't love him as left tackle. I prefer him more as a guard because of the fact that he loses through his frame so frequently, despite being that size. I don't think he has the best range and pass protection when he's working on an island, but it's just a bit of an odd fit to me. I know he's a really good athlete, and you can put him in space in the run game, and he's really could be special there. He's his straight line speed is very impressive, but I just think that the ability to even redirect inside for B-gap counters and some other elements of the game are just not there, and not what I prefer for a guy who's playing on an island.
Yeah, I will say is, in my opinion, this should, like, if Keldrick Falk is there at 25, it's the most Dennis Allen guy to ever exist, to be honest, in the draft. They would probably sprint that card in for him. But, if you can find a spot for Caden Proctor and you like the upside of him, it could work out. I just think there's bigger needs on this team, personally, especially on the defensive side of the football. Getting a guy in your front seven, specifically your defensive line, to make a day one impact like Falk. If you like, there's a lot of discourse around Falk right now. I still think there's a clear vision with him. But I think Proctor, I would have just gone on the complete opposite side of the ball.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you. I'm not the biggest Caden Proctor guy, and I actually don't like him too much at guard. But my reasoning being is, like, I see that he has the athletic traits. He's also had problems like keeping weight and doing things like that. But it's like, to me, it just doesn't show nearly enough on tape for me to like think he has the agility to play guard at the next level. And like, he does clearly have it. So there will be, like, he potentially, if he reaches what he actually shows in like athletic profiles and stuff like that, even when he was recruited out of high school, he can absolutely be that. I just haven't seen enough to trust it there. I agree exactly what you just said with the Cardinals as well. Like, I probably would have went on the other side of the ball. And the biggest thing with it is, I do think, like, at the same time you're seeing a tackle run, this is kind of how teams do react in the real draft as well, where like once you start seeing those guys go, it scares a few other teams to start kind of pushing ahead, pushing some guys up the board. I think, though, that Caden Proctor, it kind of doubles for what I said about Lomu, but in a different way, where it's like the size profile, like everything that's so intriguing about him. And granted, it's like an unpolished wall. Like, we haven't seen the painting yet, but like, you can't, like, there's not enough players where there's enough risk to see the high ceiling reward. And so somebody might have him pushed up the board because of that.
Yeah. And then, Ben, do you want to add anything on Proctor? Or you want to kick off Blake Miller?
I'll really quick. I'll touch on Proctor to get this moving, though. Yeah, Proctor. Weirdly enough, I felt like he played against better athletes more than he. I felt like he played better against like guys trying to bend the corner than he did against power. Like, and that's weird to say about a guy with his build. You shouldn't be getting dog walked into the pocket as much as you are if you're Caden Proctor. Like, his feet are a little bit slow, and when he's coming out of his stance, he's slower to settle into that base with that kick step. So if you can get your hands into him really quickly, sometimes he actually does struggle to anchor. I feel like that got better as the season moved along, but then you got these games against guys like Joshua Josephs who are trying to get you by bending the corner around you, where you see he's actually able to match up with guys like that as an athlete sometimes. So yeah, I got problems with him in every phase. I think he's very unrefined just all around, but it's great athlete. It's hard to argue with, but I'd rather try for like the second to third round type range with Caden Proctor.
And just kick off Blake Miller if you want.
Yeah, I would have rather the Browns went with Blake Miller if they were going to pick a lineman at 24. I think Miller has so much more refinement than Lomu does. I have the same anchor concerns with Blake Miller. I love his hands. I love how active they are. I love how they're up and ready immediately, and they're attached at the end of 35-inch arms. Like, there's a lot to love with. And frankly, I thought he stepped up a lot in the run game this year from a technique standpoint. It's kind of the way I felt about Anton Harrison coming out, which both worries me but also encourages me, because I love the way that he can operate at tackle at a position where you need to have those fleet feet that are just so quick. Like, it's hard to beat him through trying to cross his face and outmaneuver him, because he's there. Not only does he have those movement skills, but he anticipates so well. Like, from a pass pro standpoint, I absolutely love him. But there's also just some reps where you feel like that inside hand is a little bit less firm than some of the other guys in this class. You know, that stopping power, that like able to just get in and freeze you. That's probably why he had to get so good at working his hands as the rep continued. So I worry about that. And then once you are able to reach his chest, if you can, then I worry about his anchor ability to just drop his weight and stop you and die slowly.
Yeah, I mean, I like it a lot. Like, my biggest thing with Blake Miller, where I really like him, is and I kind of like the fit, honestly, here too as well. And granted, like, we haven't seen a lot of what they're going to do at OC fully to like have faith that it's going to last a while. But for what it lasts as right now, what I love about Blake Miller the most is seeing him in screen games and like active movement. Like, when he's moving on from plays, like, you see him in space, and in space he's incredible. And that's what I love about him as a no tackle, even more than a lot of these other guys. Like, while I'm the biggest low move guy you'll find, Blake Miller is really that guy in space that you like to eat up space. And on top of that, I just think it would be actually a really good fit for the Cardinals. And it's really intriguing to see where he's going to actually go in the real draft too, because now like we're starting to see rises towards him, which he's deserved the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will say, once I saw the trade up happen, I thought this was guaranteed Ty Simpson. I thought this was getting the 5th-year option on the QB. So Blake Miller kind of shocked me. Sam, if you want to talk about your Clemson guy really quick, and then you can just kick it off to Malachi Lawrence if you're going to stick around.
Yeah, I mean, 4-year starter, he was terrible. As a freshman, like, he was awful. Like, I want him gone so bad. But he made a really good jump into his second year. I think everyone thought he was going to make the jump as a junior and then like be a first-round pick after his junior season. Didn't happen. I thought I had some difficulties in the game against Texas in the college football playoff, and then he made a really big jump this past year. Where I think he got a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, definitely more impactful in the run game. A lot more finishes in the run game where he's actually pancaking guys, which made me really think he could be this first-round caliber prospect. And he's very clean. Like, he doesn't have some of the really big goofs you'll see from Monroe Freeling or Caleb Bloom, like just the mistakes. Blake Miller doesn't really have those. He's a much more cleaner, much more refined player. You can see that he's been a 4-year starter. You can see he has all that development in him. So I think you're not, again, probably not drafting a guy who's going to be an all-pro, but if you're drafting to like hit a double, I would say, and like have a guy who's going to be a second contract player for you on the line, I think you're going to get that with Blake Miller. Will he have some issues with like the core strength and maybe losing to the frame every now and then? Yeah, but I don't think he's going to give up 40 pressures a year. I think he might give up like 24, which is fine. You can live with that. Most of what the NFL is along the offensive line is just trying to have a guy who's a B minus, or just a regular B somewhere in your offensive line. That's usually good enough for the league, because that's kind of how you win. Just put a lot of those guys that like the quality stars together versus going out and getting these like all pros. I think Miller fits that mold. He's a very clean, consistent player, and a good pickup for Arizona. Malachi Lawrence to Dallas. I'm a little bit lower than him on a lot of guys think in the draft professors in general. I just don't see it in run defense. I just don't see a player who can give you 3-down ability in that area. I understand like the Yarmouth's not as great as reported in the offseason, but at the same time, like, you still got the amazing speed and bend for a player with that level of size and those traits. It's fantastic. But I think that the run defense is not nearly as impactful as you want it to be. And you look at guys like him, Howell, and Armix and Thomas, and some of the size limitations they have. Malcolm Lawrence doesn't have those same limitations, but I think he's also like in that bucket of, hey, these guys are mostly non-impact players in run defense.
Yeah.
And for a player like Lawrence, who has decent sized arms, I would expect a lot more than what you actually get.
Yeah, this is definitely. I've been high on Malachi Lawrence this summer. He's been in my top 10 since the summer. I love the guy. I think the only place where we just are different, Sam, is just I see the vision as a future 3-down player. You know, I think for sure there needs to be steps taken in order to get there. But I think, especially when you put him in the grouping of Cassius Howell, Armix and Thomas, and Malachi Lawrence. Who would I bet on of the three to become that 3-down player? It'd be Malachi Lawrence easily for me. And I just think when I first watched him, the hand speed that he had, and just once he learns, the timing, the precision with his hands, it's going to be deadly because those hands are so fast. I mean, I think they're the best hands, not the best, the fastest hands in the draft. I think, like you said, the speed off the edge, the bend, the dip that he possesses at his size is really impressive. It's just, can he become that 3-down player to warrant, this high of a draft pick and warrant being top 10 on my board? I just believe in him, but it wouldn't shock me at all if he turns into just a very good DPR and he fits into the realm of the R. Mason Thomas's, the Cassius Howells. So for my placement on my big board is more just a bet on his upside.
Yeah, I think with me, with Malachi Lawrence, it's kind of off of what we were saying earlier, where I'm a big run defense guy when it comes to my edges. I'm huge into that. I think it's way easier to teach pass game than it is to teach run game at times. I know I'm like controversial in terms of that sometimes. But with Malachi Lawrence, there's also just like a sense of explosiveness. So it's just like you can see the talent like ushering in. I think ironically, like all three of those guys in that pass rush group all have like such interesting traits that vary from the other ones. But the thing with Malachi Lawrence is like I just don't know how it's going to develop as a run game. And to me, it's a little bit lower. I think when you walk in and you're like a pass rusher day one, but that's mainly what you could do, that's when I want a guy more in the second, third round, just because I want to start him in the rotation and then build him as an edge. So for me, round one's a little bit of a reach, but I can see falling in love with the traits. I can see falling in love with just the idea of like, hey, man, like, honestly, a lot of like there needs to be juice in this pass rush group. And like that guy is filled with tons and tons of juice.
He's just one of those guys that feels like he's good enough at everything. Like he's got good get off, but it's not something that's gonna like be like, whoa, wow, look at him coming off the ball. He's got good bend and cornering speed, but you're not like, holy crap, I blinked and he was in the pocket. He's got a good bag of moves. Like you see him able to hit those arm swipes and hit that cross chop sometimes, and he also is able to counter inside as well. But then also you'll see him get stuck on some reps as well. Kind of the similar discussion that I had with Cassius Howell too. I feel like he's a little bit tight from a lateral standpoint. So if you need to work back across somebody's face, then it's not quite as efficient with him. And yeah, the run game concerns though, I totally agree. I don't think he's going to be somebody that you're counting on to contribute as a run game, like edge setter. But I think he could be a really good number 2 pass rusher to somebody's number 1. Maybe not immediately, but at some point, like after he sees it in the NFL a little bit, I totally think he could.
And he's getting into a nice rotation with Rashawn Gary and with Donovan Izaraku in Dallas. And you can never have enough edge rushers. But the Texans at 28 go with Max Ihenacho, high upside right tackle. I'm a bit lower on him because I don't really trust him to start day one. He did play very well against the Texas Tech front seven. He played very well against Romello Height, played very well against David Bailey, but there's still some questions I have about him starting day one, and that's what I assume would happen in Houston. His position might be up in the air, but I don't think you take tackle round 1 with the offensive line that they have and expect him to wait a year. So what do you guys have on Max Ihenacho?
Yeah, Ihenacho, I was higher on him than consensus like during the season. I think I had like an early 3 on him, which for me puts him like in the 60s or so on my board. And then people started mocking him in the first round, and I just can't get there. Like I watched him at the Senior Bowl, and I know some people are reporting him as a winner at the Senior Bowl. The dude got his butt kicked for most of the event.
Thank you for
saying
saying
that. It was an issue that pops up on tape too. So it's not just me scouting from the one-on-ones, that kind of stuff. It's pops up on tape as well. He loses through his frame a lot. He's another player who's got like a frame that should have a good anchor and good capabilities there, but he still loses through his frame quite a bit, even more so than players like Blake Miller who have these lighter builds to them. And he got pushed around just so frequently and had so many clean losses as well at the edge. It's just when your instincts kind of flare up to not go some direction, that's kind of how I felt. Like I just felt instinctively that I can't make the move for this guy that early. If Pittsburgh takes him at 21, I'll have my head in my hands and be shaking my head. Like it's just not going to be a very good night for me if that's the case. So I think the upside's fantastic because he's a good mover. He's a good overall athlete. You see the super explosive player in his lower body. For a guy that size, you got all the tools in the world you could want. But I don't see it on film yet. And so to me, I think this is just another guy where it's like ideally it's a draft and stash for like a year, but I'm not there with him being a day one contributor.
Yeah, thank you for saying that about the Senior Bowl. I had the same feeling. I really got into his tape like after the Senior Bowl, and then I watched the Senior Bowl tape back. I did not see all I was hearing all week is about how he kicked everyone's butt. And no, I had the same questions about his footwork as I do on tape. I hate his feet. I really hate his feet. I think he struggles to settle into that firm base. I think he leads with his upper half a little bit, and he's not in a good position to absorb power and anchor down. He has strength. I do think he is a strong guy. I just don't think he sets himself up well to absorb that contact and be able to just not get rotated. Like I'm not a big fan of him either, but there's also that like caveat of he's very new to the game of football as well. He's one of those guys that you're kind of hoping that there's more development coming down the line, even though he's 23. So I do like him. I have around 2 to 3 grade on him. I, again, would not be thinking about him in the first round. And he doesn't show me enough in the run game, too, to think he's going to contribute in that phase. I just think he's a project.
Yeah, for me, I think it really just ultimately comes down to that idea of, well, one, like the Texans desperately always need offensive line help. Like we could start there. The Texans, more than anybody, almost constantly need more offensive line help, and they need a ton of it. But that being said, with him as well, I'm so glad that the Senior Bowl thing was brought up too, because like I was literally there. And I went home in my hotel room and watched the reps because I didn't understand what people were saying. I was in there and I'm like, what did I miss? Like, did I miss something crazy? But the biggest thing is with him too, like you guys pretty much took most of the words out of my mouth. And there's obviously like the age concerns, and nobody can really pinpoint what the heck his age actually is. It seems like we've had different sources on different sizes of it. But the biggest thing with him, too, is I think you look at this board and you see all the offensive tackles that win. And you kind of feel like you almost have to play your hand a little bit because, like, there's not too much talent left. A lot of these guys were most of my top day 2 guys that win already. And so you don't want to be the bridesmaid who left without a groomsman. And that's essentially where you're kind of at. And, like, if there's any team that's, like, in my head can reach for an offensive lineman, it would be the Houston Texans.
Yeah. And then next up was TJ Parker, going to the Chiefs. Really, I like the pick. I like the fit. I think TJ Parker, throughout the season played himself back up into round 1 conversations. It was, compared to what we thought we were going to see in the summer to now, it was a bit of a downhill ride for him. But what he did at the Senior Bowl was very good. It wasn't, like he wasn't like the best player there, consensusly, but he put on a good showing. And then you watch games like the South Carolina game was very good. Even if the South Carolina team was bad, TJ Parker really got himself back in that game, I think. But I think seeing him go back end of round 1 isn't out of this world. I think you can see him go as high as 15 to the Buccaneers come draft day. There's still a lot to like. And for, if I'm going to argue for Peter Woods and the seasons he had before, I got to do the same for TJ Parker in some capacity. So I'm excited for what he can do, especially in Kansas City.
He fits Kansas City's type of player as well. Like they like to have the George Karlaftis, the Ashton July, the kind of guys who have like a lot of power profile to them, but don't have a ton of bend, frankly. And TJ Parker fits that. He's going to give you a solid edge setter. They're going to be a good, they're going to have a good ability to defend the run on the outside there. I think Parker's concern is going to be that he doesn't have a ton of bend. He has to win through the frame a lot. And he does have a good power profile. He's taking other guys literally off their feet previously on tape. But he does need to diversify his pass rush plan a bit. It can't just be long arms left and right. Even though he told me at the Senior Bowl, like, yeah, it's my favorite move. Like, I know it's your favorite move. I see it all the time. I see it every Saturday. Maybe throw a couple of more inside counters into your game. So I think he's got to develop a little bit. But again, a solid player with a higher floor. Ceiling, I don't really know with him, honestly, and I've watched him for most of his career, so I can't really even tell you where the ceiling is for this player. So it's a little bit difficult of an evaluation because of the inconsistencies year to year at Clemson. But I still think like a very talented player is going to be a quality starter. I don't know if he'll be like a roster cornerstone for you, but he's going to be a guy who I think will get multiple contracts in the NFL. And even if he's only 6 to 8 sacks a year, I think he's going to all round out to be a good enough star where you feel like you don't have to draft another edge rusher anytime in the future.
Yeah. So I am curious. I came around on his speed to power by the end of my evaluation of him. Throughout the season, I was a little bit worried about his get off. I was worried about his ability to actually convert speed to power. And then I saw him at the Senior Bowl, and it looked like a completely different guy. And I went back to more of the 2024 tape, and I saw that more often as well. So I'm curious, Sam, what your take is on why this season it just didn't feel like he was able to summon that as much.
Tom Allen. It's all Tom Allen's fault. No, I think it's tough because there was the change of defensive coordinator, and you saw everyone across the entire line take a step back. You know, it wasn't just them. Even Wade Wood as a linebacker played worse than he did previously. So I think there's some level of influence there. I don't have as much connections in the building as I did back when I was a student, so I can't really give you like inside information as to why some of that stuff went down or what some of the feelings were. I think there was definitely some guys who were dejected in that room. You know, just from a couple of rumblings and seeing them on tape, they were expected to be a college football playoff team, and they just very clearly weren't very early in the season. So I can't give you the best answer. I don't have like a ton of insider information for that, but at the same time, I think we saw some speed power the prior year. I think we saw it more often the prior year. I think it was a very soft start to the year for TJ Parker and for Cade Klubnik, and they kind of figured it out later in the season.
Yeah.
So I kind of think you're drafting based on like what this guy was during his best games, and you admit that every now and then he'll have an off week perhaps, but I think you're looking at the prime tape and you're saying, okay, that's the player we're going after.
See, for me, he's like a player that's really interesting because I think a lot of people are just overthinking the fact that like he has the ideal frame and build, and like there's just not a lot of edges like that in this class. But I think the other thing with him as well that's so interesting, I know we talked about like the long arm stuff, and I'm so glad that Hank brought up the Senior Bowl as well, because I kept saying that like he was the consensus best player nonstop. And I was like, he was pretty good, but like the consensus best player, I don't know if I'd say that.
So guys, I'm getting a couple of texts. So we need to make an admin pick here for the Patriots. So what do you guys think the Patriots need, and what do you guys think based upon how this board has fallen? Jordan,
Can we see the available players? Do you have a tab with available players?
Yes, that would be beneficial.
Okay, so this is in alphabetical order.
Oh, nice.
And I've got to update this list, but this is a list of available players.
I mean, instantly my mind goes to someone who can stop the run after what happened in the Super Bowl. You know, whether that's defensive tackle, that's edge, just getting another body in there that can be a day one run stuffer. You know, guys like Keldrick Falk and Zion Young don't really fit the mold of edge rushers that they have. I think they'd be very beneficial to the play on the field, though. And a guy like Caden McDonald could just go in there day one and be a good run stuffer. You know, but I'm open to a plethora of ideas here.
I mean, I'm game for Kendrick Falk. I like haven't seen this whole draft obviously yet, so I don't know like who is fully on the board. But Keldrick Falk feels like it fixes so many other problems. Like, and that's exactly what I was saying with Edge earlier. I think it's way easier to teach pass game than it is to teach run game. And like what Keldrick Falk already has is that run side upside, and it's like already there. It's just about establishing that pass rush ability, and they gain a lot of that from their interior. So like he can kind of benefit off of everybody involved in that group, and really like I think like he would be an ideal fit as an edge for them if it somehow fell to this.
If you're going edge, I mean, yeah, it depends on what you want to accomplish. The top player on my board is still Akeem Mesidor, but if you want to accomplish. I don't think I didn't see the same. I mean, obviously not the same edge setting and like stack peak shed ability that Keldrick Falk had. So if you do want to go with a run stuffer, I definitely think Falk would be the pick, even though it's not necessarily a scheme fit from the edge perspective. I also wouldn't mind Denzel Boston here, considering that you just lost Stephon Diggs. You're kind of hoping that one of the guys that you have on roster right now is going to take a step forward. You're banking on Romeo Doubs to maybe try and set himself apart as a number one, which I'm not sure how that will go. I don't know if I have the utmost confidence in that. A guy like Denzel Boston could be somebody that could emerge as a leader for this room.
Yeah, I like Denzel Boston a lot too. I think like the thing is too, like I didn't even realize the Mesidor's here. It's such an interesting dilemma because I've been saying it over and over again. I think if like you're ready to compete now, like Mesidor is the better pick. But if you're looking to compete later, like you're doing more of a Keldrick Falk. But that being said, it's like the Patriots are kind of in that middle ground where they're ready to compete later and they're ready to compete now. So
I think we need to.
I think Keldrick Falk.
We should pick.
Yeah, we need to make a pick. Jim's been waiting on us. Keldrick Falk or Akeem Mesidor.
I'm okay with that. He's typing in Keldrick Falk right now. I'm all right with that.
Cool.
Yeah, if you're good, because I do agree. I mean, not just in the Super Bowl. I feel like as the season moved along, too, there were some run-stopping concerns from that defense. You could definitely benefit from getting someone in that room that's so already polished at the age of 20, by the way, as he is right now. So if you're looking for run stop ability, I think Keldrick Falk's the way to go.
We now
Yeah.
have to double back around and get to Colton Hood.
Yeah, we do. I can start off. When we were doing the marathon mock, it was 2 weeks ago now. I ended up like campaigning. I'm a big D'Angelo Pons guy. I campaigned for D'Angelo Pons. Does he fit the Dolphins, new idea of what their cornerbacks will be? No, but that was just a fun one. Colton Hood, I think, does fit that. This guy's going to be on the boundary, fits their height thresholds, I think, what they're looking for at corner, and he should just be a day one. Honestly, probably their CB1 from day one. So you need something on the defense. You want Maui Noah earlier. And I think here it's definitely just get the best defensive player that's probably going to be in the secondary. I honestly, if we're just going off pure skill set, I would have liked to see Pons or Avion Terrell here. But in terms of what their thresholds are, I think Colton Hood is like one of the top guys that would fit those thresholds.
Yeah, I didn't even realize Terrell was still out there too. I agree with that. But the other aspect of it is like more than, and I said this about the Texans, the offensive line, more than anybody, the Dolphins need to take like 1 trillion corners. Like you cannot walk into Storm Duck being your number one corner ever again. I never want to see it. So like ultimately I agree with like the thresholds too. I think there's just so much upside as well with Colton Hood that like hasn't been explored yet. And like that's kind of the idea of where you're picking anyways, because like you need somebody who's going to set that room right. Angelo Pons as well. That's one of my guys. But at the same time, like you need outside corners, you need inside corners, you need every type of corner. I don't even think there is a skill set that you can't put on the Miami Dolphins that wouldn't be an improvement over the corner room they have. And ultimately, like I think like you set yourself up right now by getting that guy who already has like kind of a bigger build, bigger frame, and then like you can go and pick your next guy later. But ultimately, I just think they need more than one corner in this class anyway. So like we'll see what they do in the next rounds as well.
Yeah, Hood, very fluid athlete, very aggressive player, I would say. I think there's going to be an element of boom or bust to his performance in the NFL, especially off the bat. I think you kind of take him over Terrell. I don't know. Like Terrell's my high-grade player for me personally, but I think Terrell's best suited in the nickel role. You see what he does as a blitzer. You see what he does in the run game. You see what he does in terms of the ability to force fumbles. He's a guy I think who's better off playing like in that pseudo box side, like closer to the box essentially. So you're looking at more of a nickel role for him there. I know the NFL's played in some packages now more than ever, but I still think you want to have like that traditional size corner who can maybe match up. And if you want him to have him travel, he can travel as well. You want the type of player, and Colton Hood is that guy. I'm not sure that Terrell would be. And with D'Angelo Pons, you just can't. If you're Miami right now with the current roster and staff you have, you cannot take a historical outlier in the secondary in the first round. You just can't do it. It's unjustifiable. And Pons certainly is that.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Hood
So
as well.
give me a minute, guys. So DMW Sports, just grab your pick and put it into the chat, because apparently there are other podcasts that are waiting for pick 32 to come in before they close down their podcast. And Jerry Ostrowski, that comment was specifically for you. Thank you for waiting. But yeah, so just put your pick in and then go ahead, guys. You guys can go back to Colton Hood.
Yeah, I mean, I think all the bases have pretty much been covered. I love him from a physicality standpoint. I think his hands and press coverage on the line of scrimmage are great. He's got an excellent press jam. He is more fluid than he gets credit for. I think people talk about him as this like high cut, like lumbering guy, and that's not really like what he is if you put on the tape. Like, yeah, he may be lacking like a little bit of true recovery speed, and I don't know if he's like the most explosive guy in short areas, but I think his route anticipation is very good. I think he's scheme versatile too. I love his zone eyes too. I think he does a good job of passing off routes and squeezing them with good timing when they come into his zone. Like there's not a lot that I dislike, but I just really, really love the versatility of Colton Hood. I'm a big fan of his, and he is a dog at the catch point. So there's a lot to like with Hood. He's probably the corner I would have gone with here.
Yeah. And then pick 32 is Chase Besantis.
Yes.
Which,
Whoa.
I mean, I know he has some pretty big fans. I like him. I'm not like crazy high on him. I think he's like around 50 for me. But in terms of just getting a guard that'll play right away for you, I do really like it. I think that the Seahawks have the luxury of course, being at pick 32, you have one of the best rosters in football. You won the Super Bowl. I've always been campaigning Chris Bell here. I think you can afford to let him rehab that ACL. And then once you get Chris Bell across from JSN, you have a pretty good 1-2 punch in Seattle. But I'll let the guys who are higher on Besantis, like Jordan, if you want to start with the Besantis discussion, you got pretty excited there.
Yeah, so I love Basantes a lot, and I've been saying that like he's in my top 32, and I think ideally the Seahawks were always my fit, is just because one, like you get kind of that middle ground of Pregnon and Ione in a player, but even more than that, I think like he is such a big piece of anchoring that elite offensive line at Texas A&M. And you can't have Anthony Bradford anymore. You need somebody who has good movement skills, somebody who's nasty, somebody who gets that first punch in. And I think Chase Basantes does all of those things well. I think he's going to fit really well with Seattle. I think like Pregnon's more of a Baltimore 49ers type player. And I think Chase Basantes fits better with Seattle and what they really want to do. I think that ultimately he's been on my board up in that top 32 forever. And it feels like it's taken forever for him to actually break through in that range. And I just think like the upside's there. I think he's ready as a guard day one to start. And that's ultimately what you're looking for at pick 32. You don't really care about anything. You'll pick up a 5th-year option on a guard. It won't be as expensive as some of the other ones.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that's changed, but still
Yeah.
be really good.
So when Jerry Ostrowski was evaluating offensive linemen with us, Basantes was his interior offensive lineman one.
Yes, I know some people have him there.
He loved the upside of Vega, and Vega's his favorite player in the draft, but he says Basantes, like you, very similar to what you said, Jordan, can come in and start day one, kind of thing. So just you guys' overall thoughts on round one. Was there a player that you have really high on your board that didn't get selected today, Hank?
I mean, my board's always different. I would say, few names I'm shocked didn't go would be Denzel Boston, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, and probably Avion Terrell would be the 3 that I would throw out there. Mesidor maybe, but those 3 specifically I think deserve a spot in round 1. And I think there's definitely some names and some fits that I would have preferred over some other ones, but they should be off the board before pick 50 tomorrow.
So I got a little late. Can I ask you a couple questions? Did Sadiq go? Did Chris Johnson go? Those 2 players.
Sadiq went. Chris Johnson did not.
Okay. Chris Johnson is one of my highest rated players that did not go. Then Avion Terrell is 12. Brandon Cease is 16. Chris Johnson 17. None of them went from the sounds of it. So those would be players I'd be a little surprised if like 2 of them don't go, not the end of the world, but if all 3 of them don't go, I'd be pretty surprised.
Okay, and Ben, how about you? Anybody that you're surprised that didn't go?
Yeah, I mean, surprised is one way to put it. Like, I don't know. Akeem Mesidor, I could see why he would fall out of the first round, like because of the age, obviously. But I have a mid-first round grade on him. I am a big fan of his. I think he's got a wide bag of pass rush moves, and he is a relentless player to throw like 1, 2, or 3 moves at you. And he quickly will abandon a move if he realizes that he's not going to get the desired result. He's got great explosiveness off the ball. I think he's laterally fluid for somebody that plays the way that he does. There's a lot to like about him. And I think he does set a hard edge in the run game. I don't see him as somebody that's going to be like a major asset in terms of a plus add to your run defense, but he flashes it like he does. You see him come off blocks at times, just not super consistently. I like him a lot. I'm shocked. I'm a little bit surprised that some of these other edges went before him. And I've come around a little bit on Denzel Boston, especially after seeing that he was able to run a 6.8 3-cone, which is that's not what I saw on tape at time. I wonder if it's because he just struggles to sink his hips through his breaks at times. He shows twitch. He shows that burst too. Like you see a little bit of that. You see some functional athleticism. I just thought he had tighter hips. And now you're kind of talking about a guy that he can win the jump ball. Yeah, he has a little bit to him after the catch. And maybe he could start to develop a little bit more as a route runner. I was about to say a run blocker because he's great as a run blocker already. He doesn't need to develop that. So there's a lot to like with him. And with the way people talk about him, I'm a little bit surprised he didn't go.
Jordan, how about you? Anybody you're surprised?
For me, it's basically the names have been brought up. I'm actually in Sunnyside, Seattle right now. I'm looking at the Space Needle right in front of me. So I'm bringing up on the Denzel Boston points. It doesn't necessarily surprise me as much that he doesn't go, but I keep always saying that he's like if you took Polk from a few years ago and you added a few little hints of Jalen McMillan and you put them in the same thing. And he doesn't play the same way. Like he doesn't have the route running in Jalen McMillan, but he has a lot of the things that Polk didn't have that McMillan did, and it's a little bit in there. I think like my ultimate one is Avion Terrell. I was really surprised by that one. And then the fact that like I would have D'Angelo Pons in there, but it doesn't surprise me that somebody wouldn't because of the size limitations.
So, Sam, any thoughts on this comment here from Howie R. Bears?
Yeah, let's say, let me read through it. Yeah, I mean, generally, I said I avoid outliers, for specifically like age too. Like I'm looking at all that stuff, and I don't know. Did we take anyone? Did Brazilian take who was like that old of a player? Like, is this like a Mesidor comment? Really? I think that's where
Probably,
it's
yeah.
aimed at. Yeah, I mean, look, I can understand it. I think there was some buzz like a couple months ago about it, where I do believe that will have some suitors in the first round. But if you want to make the argument that, hey, like I personally, I'm not drafting outliers in this class. I'm not taking the arm length outliers. I'm not taking the age outliers. So that takes Mesidor off the board, takes Hal off the board. I'm not going after those guys. So I get that. I mean, that's very reasonable logic. It wouldn't be shocking if Mesidor does drop out of round one, but at the same time, if he goes, I mean, we've been hearing about it for months now, so that wouldn't surprise me either.
Well, and Sam, like you mentioned that in so many of your Substack articles, and if anybody watching the show is not subscribing to Sam's Substack, he's dropping a lot of knowledge in there, like every month of the year. So, like I've heard Sam say that numerous times before, both on a podcast as well as in his Substack, about drafting outliers early. Because I tend to follow very similar logic. Is if somebody's an outlier, trade down to get it. There's no reason to take it in round one or high in round two. So I first want to also thank everybody that's here. So everybody in the chat, everybody on the podcast, thank you very much. This was a very fast round one. We started at 6:30 Eastern, and we were, for the most part, done with round one in about, it was a little bit more than 2 hours, I guess. So you guys did a great job of covering 32 players in about 120 minutes. We will be live at 6:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow for rounds 2 and 3 of Epic Mock 26. So for Christian, Jordan, Sam, Ben, Hank, myself, the 90 podcasters at the Draft Professor, and the 32 podcasters who are mock drafting against each other for Epic Mock 26, thank you so much for watching. Enjoy your Thursday night. We will see you for rounds 2 and 3, 6:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.
Welcome to the Draft Professor channel, home of Epic Mock 26, April 9th, 10th, and 11th.